Sorry,
Yes,
I was. Let me repeat. I said pranam Amit ji and pranam Navroop ji, and thank you so much for joining. और बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट दिन 26 जनवरी जो है हम 77th रिपब्लिक डे सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं एंड आई थिंक नथिंग लाइक रियली लुकिंग एट वेयर द वर्ल्ड इज एंड वेयर डू वी स्टैंड एंड वी हैव सच अ ग्रेट speaker and we'll talk about his bio in a little while. But we are very, very grateful, Navroop ji. And Amit, you're always there to be the co-host. Thank you so much. We've done many spaces together. And hopefully Zahak and others will also join. So I just request all the listeners and especially our speaker, co-host and others, so please repost this space. And my DM is not working. मेरा DM नहीं काम कर रहा है. अगर आप please इसे X या
I do have. Yeah.
Twitter को कर दें please, that'll be very, very good. And Zahak is here. Welcome, Zahak. It's been a very long time. मैंने कोई space ही नहीं host की and great to have you with us. Zahak, can you hear me? I just sent you the co-host request. And Neeraj, I know that you have added. We will first do a panel and then we'll open up for Q&A. We want to spend time with Navroopji to really, we've been very lucky he accepted to be the speaker. It's the first session of India 2047 space, जो हम लोग काफी सालों से चला रहे हैं. So we'll share the whole background. पर मैं सबको request करता हूँ जितने भी अभी यहाँ पे listeners हैं, आप अगर please इसे repost कीजिए, इसे आप व्हाट्सएप में या यहाँ पर जो डीएम है, क्योंकि मेरा डीएम चल नहीं रहा है, क्योंकि अगर मैंने वो डीएम छुआ तो वो शायद रीस्टार्ट करना पड़ेगा, इसलिए आई डोंट वांट टू टच दैट स्पेस एट ऑल. उसमें वो आ रहा है मुझे बार बार मैसेज. Zahak, welcome. Thank you, brother, for joining.
थैंक यू सो मच रवि जी एंड इट्स माय ऑनर कि अमित भाई नवरूप जी और सब जो है ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं. इट्स रियली आवर ऑनर और मुझे लगता है कि हमारा जो आज का सेशन रहेगा काफी इंटरेस्टिंग होने वाला है और मैं चाहता हूं कि सब लोग इसको शेयर करें और अपने अपने डीएम्स में व्हाट्सएप जहां जहां भी शेयर कर सकते हैं इस चीज को शेयर करें.
Thank you very much. And I think before I introduce Navroopji and Zahak and Amit, I just want to give a background. ताकि जब बाकी लोग भी ज्वाइन करेंगे तो we'll do detailed bio of our most important speaker. I think basically ये जो इंडिया 2047 स्पेस जो है, ये इसकी जर्नी काफी साल पहले की है. मैं एक यूथ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को सपोर्ट कर रहा था, इट्स कॉल्ड यूथ ऑफ इंडिया. तो मुझे याद है 2015 में शैलेश ने मुझसे पूछा था हमको एक ट्विटर का हैंडल बनाना है. तो मैंने 2015 में शैलेश को बोला था कि अगर इंडिया की प्रोग्रेस देखनी है 2047 में तो वो यूथ ही उसको डिटरमिन करेंगे. तब हम लोगों ने फिर 2015 में, अगर आप जाएंगे यूथ 2047 एक ट्विटर हैंडल है, आप देखेंगे उसको हम लोगों ने उस साल एस्टैब्लिश किया था, मतलब कि 2015 में, और हम लोग 2026 में हैं. फास्ट फॉरवर्ड जब जायसवाल जी जब यहाँ पे न्यूयॉर्क में जब थे एज अ काउंसिल जनरल, तो हमारी काफी लंबी बात हुई. तो उन्होंने बोला कि सैन फ्रांसिस्को में काफी काम हो रहा है और वॉशिंगटन में काम ज्यादा हो रहा है, पर न्यूयॉर्क में जितना भी काम होता है वो यूएन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल का होता है. तो हम लोग ज्यादा इन्वेस्टमेंट के बारे में ज्यादा बात नहीं करते हैं, क्योंकि न्यूयॉर्क जो है वो वॉल स्ट्रीट से ड्रिवन है, इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग होती है यहाँ पे, पीई वर्ल्ड है. That's when we decided that we will start having a conversation about India. तब दुनिया बहुत डिफरेंट थी, अब दुनिया बहुत डिफरेंट है. पर आई थिंक वन थिंग इज वेरी क्लियर, जो इंडिया का जो एक रिजॉल्व है, द इंडिया 2047 का जो एक स्टोरी जो है, इट डज नॉट डिटर नो मैटर व्हाट हैपेंस टू जियो पॉलिटिक्स एंड व्हाट हैपेंस टू द वर्ल्ड. इंडिया का जो फोकस है टुवर्ड्स द 7.3 जो आपको प्रोजेक्शन आईएमएफ बता रहा है, वो बिल्कुल आई वुड से बिल्कुल फोकस्ड है. And I think with that note, just to say that we have done multiple spaces over the years, Zahak, Amit, Sanchit and I, and many others who have come as co-hosts at Point, on really talking about key India 2047 में कौन-कौन से key aspects हैं. So I think we are very, very fortunate today. I think we have one of the most uh, vocal voices on the India growth story, and he looks at it from all aspects. Navroop ji जो हैं वो एक he's a legal and a constitutional expert. We all know that, and he will also dive into that to really understand from where we stand the legislation reform. He's an author. I'm sure all of you have read. If you have not read, then you really have to go and get the Great Reset. And he's been talking about the Great Reset for us quite some time, right? In his in his writings, in his interviews, in his own, tweets and other places. He's really talked about the Great Reset, and we are right now really in the middle of the Great Reset, and I think which is great, and I really hope it's great because it will really change, and it's changing as we speak right now, right? 26 जनवरी कल 27 जनवरी होने वाली है. 20 साल के बाद एक EU इंडिया का एक FTA एग्रीमेंट होने वाला है. मतलब कि बिल्कुल सर आपने बिल्कुल सही बोला है. And of course, the whole discussion about दुनिया जो है इतने सेंचुरी से इवॉल्व हुई है. पहले पैक्स रोमाना था, फिर पैक्स ब्रिटानिका आया, उसके बाद अब पैक्स अमेरिकाना है. तो व्हाट डज इट रियली मीन? तो हम लोग उसको बिल्कुल निचोड़ेंगे, उसको तोड़ेंगे कि कैसे अमेरिका एक इतनी इम्पोर्टेंट प्लेयर बन गई सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद, कौन कौन से इंस्टीट्यूशंस आए. And then, of course, I'm very, very fortunate because I have with me my co-host who are themselves extremely, big influencers in the X community on YouTube, on television. You see them all the time. I have Zahak Tanveer, and I had the opportunity to meet him here. We had lunch together here in New York, which was amazing. And Navrubji, I really have to meet you in person. I've been, on different aspects we have connected, but we have to meet in person. But of course, Zahak is a writer. He's there on the television, but also talking about the Middle East perspective. He's an authority to really look at, and he debunks a lot of myth around Muslim Brotherhood. He really talks about some very critical root issues of where the world is, and especially India's relationship and how India is emerging. And और ये इनका जो खुद का प्लेटफॉर्म है आपने देखा है, जो मिली क्रॉनिकल्स है UK बेस्ड, उसमें भी काफी इनके आर्टिकल्स जो हैं आई वुड रियली रिक्वेस्ट यू टू फॉलो. एंड अमित जो हैं वो TNH ओपिनियंस के फाउंडर हैं, को फाउंडर हैं, और एक काफी आपको पता है बहुत ज्यादा स्पेसेस बहुत टाइम से डिफरेंट इश्यूज के साथ लेके आते हैं. आई ऑल्सो हैड अ वेरी गुड अपॉर्चुनिटी टू स्पेंड सम टाइम विद हिम इन इंडिया मे बी अबाउट 2 years ago. And I think again, great to really debunk a lot of myth around India, right? And that's what our panel is today. So a very, very warm welcome. We have amazing people in the listeners, and we'll bring you up. Just want to spend some time with Navroopji. So just want to give him the opening. Let Zahak and Amit also just say a few words to welcome Navroopji, and then we will continue.
Thank you so much,
So,
Ravi ji,
sir,
and it's
you can go
yeah,
first.
please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead, Amit ji.
No, please continue. Please continue. Yes.
No, thank you so much, and I'm glad कि मैं आज अमेरिका फर्स्ट और इंटरनेशनल रूल बेस्ड ऑर्डर के ब्रेकडाउन पर कुछ हम इस तरह से कन्वर्सेशन कर रहे हैं और को-होस्ट कर रहे हैं. रवि जी, थैंक यू सो मच. आपकी आइडियाज हमेशा से बहुत बेनिफिशियल रहे हैं, स्पेशली टू द एक्स कम्युनिटी एंड आल्सो ऑन द लिंक्डइन एज वेल. और ये हमारी खुशकिस्मती है कि आज हमारे साथ नवरूप जी हैं और हम उनके साथ इतना डिटेल में डिस्कशन रहेगा अभी. और बहुत से क्वेश्चंस भी हैं, मेरे पास भी कुछ क्वेश्चंस हैं मिडिल ईस्ट और इंडिया रिलेटेड, और मैं समझता हूँ अमित जी के पास भी काफी कुछ क्वेश्चंस हैं, एंड वी हैव अ लॉट ऑफ बेनिफिशियल डिस्कशन अहेड. तो मैं तो बस सुनने के लिए बेचैन हूँ नवरूप जी को. हाँ, तो अमित जी आप बताइए आपका.
Ji, thank you. Thank you, Ravi bhai, for organizing this along with Zahak ji, and it's an honor. And Naru bhai, we have been interacting for a while, and it's always pleasure to hear you. So looking forward on this very topic again. I think this will be a fascinating session. Wish all of you a very happy Republic Day. It's a great day. It's a big day. And we will have many more across centuries and millennials to come. 26th January would be a special day for a long time. So आज उसी नोट पे स्टार्ट करते हैं रवि भाई, प्लीज.
Absolutely, Amit, absolutely lovely. I just want to say again to requesting all the amazing listeners and our partners, who've been always there supporting the India story. Please इस space को WhatsApp में या DM में और इसे repost कीजिए, जो purple right side में नीचे जो उसको please main जो posting है, अभी उसमें सिर्फ 5 लोगों ने उसे repost किया है. So requesting all of you to repost this. We have about 125 people here, so that will really boost the space. Today's topic is very important. I don't want to say too much. I want to actually you probably say things at my conclusion. But Navroopji looks at this from 360 degree. You know, he will really dive into it. I've requested him to really spend about 20, 25 minutes. You know, the space is yours, sir, to really tell us, you know, that where are we in the world? Of course, we want to talk about America first. And then from that lens to really understand the evolution of America, right, as a superpower. And now we are seeing some shockwaves, and I would say that very clearly that there is definitely a decline, and we see it from all the different indicators. तो हम लोग ये स्पेस हिंदी और इंग्लिश में करेंगे, ज़्यादा कोशिश करेंगे कि हिंदी में करें, पर हम लोग इंग्लिश में शायद बीच में जाएंगे. पर नवरू जी, अगर आप इसको प्लीज बताएं फ्रॉम अ पॉलिटिकल पर्सपेक्टिव, from an economic perspective, from a financial perspective, from a geopolitics perspective, from a defense perspective, and of course, from a, you know, when you get into the finance part, please look at the dollar and de-dollarization. And of course, from a cultural perspective, because there is no denying that America's uses soft power to also do a lot of influence all over the world, right? ये हम सबको पता है. और अगर आप उसके बारे में कुछ बात करें, एंड प्लीज इट बी ग्रेट अगर आप लोगों को मोर, आपकी स्टोरी टेलिंग तो बहुत ही बढ़िया, अगर आप उसी तरीके से सबको लेके जाएं, एंड द स्पेस विल बी रिकॉर्डेड, एंड हम इसके एक छोटा सा इसके ऊपर हम एक राइट अप भी डालेंगे जो we'll try to put it in some press, but also we will put it on LinkedIn and create an article. And again, lovely to see everybody joining us. So over to you, Navroop ji. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Ravi Bhai. Thank you so much, Zahak Bhai. Thank you so much, Amit Bhai, for a wonderful introduction. First of all, wishing everyone a very happy Republic Day. 77th Republic Day हमारा आज Republic मना रहा है, and what a proud moment it is. I will keep on switching between English and Hindi so that, as you said, keep better रहे लोगों के लिए समझने के लिए. So we are in a global scenario which has not existed for probably a century. मतलब ये century के बाद का event है. 1930 से 1940s के बाद वैसा कोई event आया है जो एक दुनिया एक ऐसे कस्प पे आके खड़ी है जहां पे geopolitical order, global rules based order, global trade, global security defense architecture, global monetary system, all is under major stress and cracks are appearing. It is a matter of time, but not if, but when these cracks widen and the system collapses under its own weight. And I still remember, अगर आप मेरा पिन ट्वीट देखेंगे तो मेरे पिन ट्वीट में मैंने बहुत ओपनली ये 2017 में 20 जनवरी को जब डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने वो किया था और उसने बोला था अमेरिका फर्स्ट, so I had openly written on that mark this date as a seminal date, a date after 9/11. The world should remember this date because that is the date when Donald J. Trump, reference elites, declared war on the current international global order with America first. This was 20th of January 2017. So technically, the world had 9 years to prepare for this. This was coming. The world in between thought Donald Trump is gone in 2020 and maybe we will not get to this brink. So everyone, after the pandemic ended, Biden came, everyone thought, let's go back to the old status quo. Probably we will not meet. But unfortunately, Biden administration not only continued with the America First policies, but it put gasoline on fire by confiscating the reserves of Russia, which marked the pivotal point in the whole reset, which is also I'm going to elaborate further. अब इसमें आपको ये जानना जरूरी है कि अमेरिका का जो एक इतिहास में 2-3-4 पन्नों को अगर आप देखेंगे, एक तो अमेरिकन सिविल वॉर बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, लोगों को वो जानना जरूरी है. अमेरिकन सिविल वॉर इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट थी बिकॉज अमेरिकन सिविल वॉर में यू हैड द अमेरिकन द स्टेट्स इन द नॉर्थ. रवि जी, आपका होस्ट का कनेक्शन इशू दिखा रहा है, प्लीज, आई डोंट नो, तो प्लीज आप देख लीजिए, ठीक है. तो You had the Americans, the Lincoln, who wanted to unite the states in the South. You had the Confederacy in the South, which was backed by the British, the secessionists, right? And in between, you had the Russians sending the naval fleet to San Francisco and New York, which was welcomed in New York with rather fanfare, which helped Lincoln consolidate and ultimately win the war, putting the British forces at bay. In response, the Americans actually, Lincoln got assassinated after some time. Sorry, Alaska deal happened, and then you had the Secretary of State go to Moscow, where he was given a huge banquet at the Kremlin. It was Imperial Russia at that time, and at that time, just before the Secretary of State arrived, you had an assassination attempt on Tsar Alexander, which was foiled. It is not a coincidence that two assassinations attempts were made simultaneously, because the American Union happened. And I have written an article on this, that that was a fight between the nationalist GOP led by the Lincoln and the British free trade radicals. Great. Okay. So cutting the long story short, we had the American nationalists versus the British free trade radicals happening in American Civil War. We had two assassination attempts, one Lincoln, which was successful, one on the Tsar Alexander, which was unsuccessful. 40 years down the lane, we had another assassination of President McKinley, post which in US, after which they had, the logjam was cleared, and finally they managed to get the Federal Reserve Act passed in 1913, and the Income Tax Act also was subsequently brought into place, where the central banking system emerged during that time. It was during the presidency of Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, and Woodrow Wilson, who were the followers, who worked with a couple of people, and I have details about it. I'll probably read it later in the space, that how they worked with the British aristocracy and the British control over the financial system at that time, because British Empire was at peak, that they've got the Federal Reserve Act and all that changes done in the US, because there was a lot of resistance coming to the Federal Reserve kind of a institution being built into by the nationalists and the Americans. Now, then you had another president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who came into power. And 1934 or 35, I'm forgetting the date exactly, he was supposed to take oath on March 9th. At that time, the president used to take oath at March. And just 10 days, 15 days before, there was an assassination attempt on President Franklin Delano Roosevelt as well. Thankfully, he survived, but it was due to, it hit some other person in his entourage. And this all happened because Franklin Delano Roosevelt was against the British aristocracy interfering, but at the same time, he was for reshaping the post-war global order. So he had someone called Harry Dexter White. Now, Harry Dexter White was linked to John D. Rockefeller Jr. Now, Rockefeller Foundation funded the War and Peace Study in 1941 to 1945, which led to the formation of the rules-based order at that time. However, in between 1941, that is 1941 May, Britain, after its debt in the first two wars, specifically, World War I, it went into a huge debt. Then it went off the silver standard. Then the gold standard, I guess. It brought back the gold standard, and it tried to bring back the gold standard in 1925. It could not sustain that. The deficits and the debt soared through the roof. Pound was getting debased. And ultimately, 1941, by the time Atlantic Charter came on the coast of Newfoundland, FDR told Winston Churchill that, look, if you want me to fund your war against the Nazi Germany by Lend-Lease Act, then you will need to give up your empire. You will need to change the trading rules. You will need to do all the 3 or 4 list demand was provided. Winston Churchill was asked by Franklin D. Roosevelt, I will not give up India. Winston Churchill said, next day Roosevelt said on the same Atlantic Charter, this is 1941, you will have to give up every territory and give them independence, including India. That is the jewel in your crown. And that is when Winston Churchill finally reluctantly signed the death warrant of the British Empire as it existed then. And that led to, India's independence was actually sealed in 1941. All those events came later on. And that led to America, starting the Lend-Lease program. And they said, okay, once the war is done with, then you will pay us back. So Britain was under heavy debt. The pound kept on getting debased even after the World War II. And ultimately, same Harry Dexter White, who was linked to John D. Rockefeller Jr., I think son-in-law or something, was some relationship is there. I'll read out to you. So that man who worked with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and they formed the foundation of the post-war order, where at the Bretton Woods conference, they got together, the Hotel of the Bretton Woods, and they decided that they are going to, the Britain was asking for a neutral currency. Okay. The Americans flatly replied, no neutral currency. It will have to be the dollar and it will be gold backed. And it was through War and Peace study of 1941-45, which between 4 years, which was funded by Rockefeller Foundation for around $5 lakh. I guess so. The figures stand me right, but anyway, that is there. Anyone can read it on the web as well. The figures may differ. And that led to the establishment of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. So this whole architecture, and then the United Nations came into being, and then the members came into being. So the whole global structure, which was built after World War II, which we called Pax Americana, was built upon decline of Pax Britannica, which was the Britain's, the financial system shifted from London to New York, and we saw, how things developed over after that. We all have studied about it. Okay. Now, the next is that it was backed by dollar. But what happened? In between, you had a lot of, the US was involved into a Cold War. There were a series of assassinations, series of, gang wars and everything which was going on, counter warfare in Italy, the bombings in Italy were going on at that time. Even they had Charles de Gaulle in France saying, I am not using dollar. He even kicked out NATO, asked CIA to wind up its base in Paris and leave. Twice he exited NATO. There was an assassination attempt on Charles de Gaulle as well. It's a very interesting point. So many assassinations in history. Coups, assassinations. It's a very famous strategy they deployed. And then Charles de Gaulle, when he kicked out of this, so Charles de Gaulle even sent Navy to America to give my gold back, because the dollar was backed by gold at that time, and that led to running on the dollar, running on the gold. American gold reserves plummeted. Saudi Arabia was also used to sell gold to oil to USA, and in return, they used to sell, send plane loads of gold to Saudi Arabia every monthly for that settlement, because it was gold backed at that time. And this led to the American gold reserves declining from 16,000 tons to almost 6,000 tons. That is when Nixon in 71 decided, enough, I cannot continue with the system. And that is when they decided, okay, 71, we are taking America off the gold dollar of the gold peg, and we are going to put the dollar in. We are going to create a self requirement varnishing machine of self-sustaining system of U.S. Treasury. And for that, they negotiated a petrodollar agreement with Saudi Arabia and GSC that the oil globally will be sold in dollar, and whatever surpluses or whatever the countries earn out of it, the commodity trades and trade surpluses, those trade surpluses will be invested in US Treasury to keep the bond yield low, in US interest rate low, so that US empire and US dollar structure and financialization could continue further. Now this created couple of conditions. This led to one, because of Triffin's dilemma, US has to constantly run trade deficits after that, after 1971. The first trade deficit was with Germany, auto industry. US auto industry suffered. The next cycle, Japan, 1985. We had to Plaza Accord, devaluation of the dollar, and then thereafter followed Japanese real estate boom, and ultimately a crash, which which Japan took 30 years to come back to that level. So US deindustrialized in waves. The first wave, Germany. Second wave, Japan. Third wave, then the 1990s began China. And before we come to China, which is a real crux of today's problems, it was in they co-opted China, Henry Kissinger and Nixon, to get China on board for against the Soviet Union, right? The famous detente which was there. But that led to World Bank making reports with China how to, give China in the industrial blueprint. And these reports are there on the World Bank website. You can read it, China 2030 models. And interestingly, a capitalist organization based in Washington or based in New York, World Bank, which created the Pax Americana system, right?
Navruji, sorry, I think it'd be good for you to tell why World Bank and IMF were created by US and why they've always been bent towards US in the Pax Americana system. I think for some of the listeners, it may be new information.
Yep, correct. So the World Bank and IMF were created as part of the Pax Americana system to sustain America's hegemony, dominance of lending, dominance of growth. They were touted as the growth engines of the world. And one of the reasons was because Europe, as we saw, Europe was war ravaged. There was so much of colonization which had ended. So many countries had gained independence, and all of them needed financial support. And for that, US unleashed the Marshall Plan in Europe, in specifically the Western Europe, which was in the Anglosphere, orbit, to rebuild the European economies. At the same time, countries in the global south, or the third world countries, also needed equal help. So this is what they designed this for that, but ultimately this also became the imperial tools, because they used to implement those conditions and preconditions. If you want a loan, you will have to do austerity. If you want a loan, you will have to privatize these assets. If you want a loan, you will have to sell us these assets to our companies or give permissions to our corporates, which was part of the 1991 deal which India also had. I'll come to later in that and explain what all deals they did. Okay, so in the meanwhile, World Bank was supplying China all these reports. Interestingly, the capitalist World Bank was telling China, operate a state-owned enterprise model. It's okay. State capitalism chalega. They did not even pursue proper capitalism with China. They argued state capitalism chalega, right? So this led to a different, this was a bizarre, because they wanted China's help. China was supplying arms to Afghan jihadis in, via Pakistan and helping them against the Soviet Union. So that was the another aspect of it. And then under Bill Clinton, you had Boeing, you had other countries. Slowly, Boeing provided some engines to China, जिससे उन्होंने ICBMs develop करे. Boeing के ऊपर इन्होंने $1 million का फाइन लगाया और छोड़ दिया, कुछ नहीं किया. So much technology was passed on to China through this, and there was a famous case of Jonathan Pollard, the famous Israeli spy, जिसने जो है F-35 के सारे डिजाइन उठा के चाइना को पास करे वहां से. Then you had many such cases. I've documented these, one after the Mike Pillsbury की किताब है 100-year marathon. where Chinese are looking to avenge their century of shame. And Usno, as a CIA station chief, he said, I kept on warning Washington ki kya kar rahe ho, ye kya kar rahe ho, you are funding your enemy, you are providing them technology. He documents a series of events from Lend-Lease to everything. And in my book in 2016, we've actually documented how, they work together with the Soviet Union as well as, communist China. So they started funding this, and then they got China into WTO, the biggest blunder under, President Clinton, 1997-98 के बाद उन्होंने उसको लाने की बात करी. And then US went into its financialization kind of a thing, and you had the booms and busts of 2002, 2008, and all this was, going circles and circles and circles. And every wave, US kept on deindustrializing. By the time 2010, 2012 came, they realized there is no industry left. There is no manufacturing left. In America of 1940s or early 1910, 1920s, which had the steel and industry giants, which had Andrew Carnegie, which had John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company, which has these barons and magnates who created the American empire, right? Or you had Andrew Carnegie का steel था, Morgan's का financial empire था, banking empire था. So all then there was another magnate which created the railroads in USA. So the whole industrial core of the US was hollowed out. It was hollowed out because the US corporate elite, Wall Street and Silicon Valley, they decided to offshore their jobs, outsource it, right? Their product manufacturing, so that they could, enhance their financial bottom lines of their balance sheets, monetize profits, and invest further into, high-end service-oriented job, research and development. Just like you see in pharma में सारा research US से आता है, जो generic वो बहुत है वो इंडिया में बनती हैं, और जो APIs है वो चाइना से आती हैं. तो जो फार्मा की जो इन्वेंशन जो टेक्नोलॉजी है वो सारा यूएस का, मतलब वो their R&D spends are quite high. Similarly, in technology sector, so US pivoted towards a financialization of empire, towards R&D in technology, pharma, and all this stuff, while they outsourced things. So the global order worked on global order since 1970s and more since 1990s, when the true globalism was imposed on the world, where there were no barriers on immigration, free movement of trade and people, आओ जाओ जो मर्जी करो, H1B लो, आते जाओ जाते जाओ, ये सबसे चल रहा था. It is then that the whole thing was based on two premises. China as a GSIB of factories or production, which would support the cheaper flow of goods for American consumers, keeping the inflation low, and America and Russia as the GSIB, you can say. I'm giving an example, allegory kind of thing. Russia as a GSIB of low energy, lower oil, lower gas for European industry, and European industry will also manufacture cheap cars, cheap goods, and keep feeding into European consumers and American consumers. Now, and the American core was hollowed out. No industry, no manufacturing, except for high tech and financial empire, and a bit of R&D, what they do in pharma. This led to the problem of the Trump base, the Rust Belt, specifically, the Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania belt. Okay? They actually lost a lot of jobs. And with the debt and with the swindling of the kind of debt to GDP, which has reached up to $34 trillion and 120, that is where Trump said, we have had enough of this and we have to go back. Trump administration is that mindset. If you read Stephen Miran, if you read Stephen Miller, if you Stephen Miran's paper, Restructuring the American Trade, which was put out in November 2024, you read Robert Lighthizer, books about India in Trump 1, where he talks about Piyush Goyal and other Indian bureaucracy. Anyone at that time in 2017-18 would have known what America First means. America First means Charles Lindbergh. America First means during President Woodrow Wilson, when they said, we have got nothing to do with the world. We are going back to our hemispherical power between two oceans, and we live with that. And that would mean we have to reshore America, reindustrialize America. And specifically steel, specifically pharma, specifically semiconductors. Now, to add one more layer of financial jugglery with America did, and before I conclude, and I just give you one hint on America's thing. If America has to industrialize, all the countries which are running trade surpluses will have to lose their deficits. I mean, we'll have to lose the surpluses. America will have to, America's deficits will get neutralized, and those countries will lose the trade surplus. That means countries like China, South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, India, they will lose their trade surpluses. You will see the graph inverting back after decades. And that would mean these countries would have less surplus to invest into US treasuries. Now, it is not about these countries some countries are dumping treasury. That's a different issue. India has reduced by $20 billion, $50.7 billion in almost 1 year. It's a decline of 22% and gone to gold. And then you have China, which has come down from $1.3 trillion to $600 billion. Lowest since 2018. That is the kind of, dumping of treasury. And then you have the Europeans threatening America of dumping treasuries because of the Greenland issue. And the Trump retorted, if you do it, then you see the consequences, what happens. Okay. Now, it is not about those. One is dumping. The other is when you have a $7 to $8 trillion of US debt due for renewal this year. Someone will have to absorb that debt. It can simply not be Federal Reserve. It will have to be foreign buyers as well. So those foreign buyers, if these countries do not run surpluses, they do not have the money to buy, who's going to buy the debt? So if America has to reindustrialize and reshore and win the AI race with China, because you need to build, you need copper, you need silver, you need all those instrumentalities for, those metals which are rallying like crazy, because you need them to build, power infrastructure, grid infrastructure to, the prick and shovel of the AI data center story. And you are in an AI race with China milliseconds behind, as so many American tech CEOs has already spoken about. Fortunately, China has built the grid. You haven't built the grid at all. You haven't upgraded at all. China has gone so far ahead in solar industry, and you do not have the capacity to install solar at that rate. So now you want to go back to traditional energy, coal, nuclear plants start karo, coal ke plants start karo, get me power, get me grid, because you are competing in a race. But if you want to reindustrialize and rebuild, बाकी कंट्रीज का सरप्लस नहीं होगा, बाकी कंट्री का सरप्लस नहीं होगा, द ट्रेजरी नहीं खरीदेंगे, ट्रेजरी नहीं खरीदोगे, the yields will go up. 10-year bond, 5-year bond, 30-year bonds will go up. Selling hogi, yields will go up. Inverse hota hai bonds ka. And when that happens, because that means if the yields go up, US ki debt servicing mein problem ho jayegi. Because interest, you will have to pay $1 trillion of interest. And how do you do about it? Then you will have to ask the Federal Reserve to intervene, to put the Fed put and say, no, you artificially suppress the yield curve. You do not allow the rates to go escalate beyond a point of time and keep buying your debt. And that would mean a pliant governor, which Jerome Powell is not doing or not willing to go to that extent, which is why Trump is railing against him. And once he gets his governor, he will do the yield curve suppression. Bhaiya interest rate ko aur niche leke aao, jo artificially suppress karo. If the interest rate is 1.5% to 2% and the inflation is 2.8, 3, 3.5, because everything is going to get expensive. Because demand बढ़ रहा है, silver का demand बढ़ रहा है, copper का demand बढ़ रहा है. Because you have to do you are doing the biggest infrastructure build out in global history after decades. Like in IR 4.0, Industrial Revolution 4.0. So when that structural inflation gets to play out and the rates are artificially suppressed, why will people hold the junk bonds of America, which will give real negative returns. So which is why either you choose the strength of the US bond market, the treasury, or you choose to reindustrialize, reshore, or win the AI race. And the Americans have decided to go ahead with reshoring and reindustrializing, and they will not mind if the dollar gets debased. That is what, the perils of a reserve currency are. And every empire has gone through this cycle. The British Empire went through it. The Roman Empire went through it. Now the Americans are going through it. I call this the twilight phase of the American Empire, because these are 15, 20, 25 years, where this whole process plays out. And now everyone is talking, like dollar is falling, gold and silver are touching new highs every day. It's gone crazy, literally going up to 100 to 109 for silver and 5,400 for gold. This is happening because the trust in the American system is broken down, because the smart money, or what I call the big investors, see that the treasury market is not probably going to function. It's not about who's dumping. It is about when that debt gets for renewal, and there are not that much of people who are in the market to buy that kachara debt. You have a problem. Houston, we really have a problem over here. And that is exactly the problem. And if you want to sustain, which is why Donald Trump is targeting the BRICS plus countries, because these are the countries which are the commodities powerhouses. China mines 60 to 70% of the silver. It has stopped the export of silver. Then you have America, which gives 25% of its uranium to US plants. And it also has a lot of rare earths and minerals in Siberia and elsewhere. Right? So you have these countries who are building alternate payment settlement system to bypass the dollar. Trading, you have countries like Iran, countries like Venezuela, countries like Saudi Arabia even, which are trying to do selling oil in yuan to China, which they don't like. And then you have countries, forming alternate payment settlement system, alternate blocks. So this leads to the American compounding of the problem. They have a BRICS plus problem. They have a set bypassing of the dollar, because if today me and you do not trade on a payment settlement system, which is SWIFT, and we conduct bilateral trade in our bilateral currencies or in a digital currencies respectively, like I hold a yuan and Amit Bhai holds a e-rupee, and we trade with each other, and Ravi Bhai and on a system which we both operate, and Ravi Bhai cannot see it or cannot sanction. He has no ability to sanction it. He loses the power. The empire, Ravi Bhai's empire or his financial institution will lose the power to sanction it, to stop the trade. And that is the problem for him. That is exactly America's problem. It is not about a BRICS currency, which may or may not happen. It is about a payment settlement system, an alternative to the dollar. Dollar-based payment settlement systems, which is already built up. It's ready by the BRICS. Dilma Rousseff committee had approved it, and I think the RBI in this BRICS summit has already told that why not let us do interlink our digital currency with each other, and which is why Iran is a bigger trade of commodity, providing oil to China, lifeline oil to China in yuan. Why do same Maduro was doing? So you have all these problems compounding together: a currency, debt, debasement of dollar. You have reindustrialization, reshoring choice, or you let the dollar go, bond market break, or you go towards your empire is empty and hollow from inside. There is no industrial base. You anyway know that if you continue this path of boom and bust cycle, ultimately your empire is going to break. So bhaiya, usse break karne se pehle, let me reshore as much as I can. So this is a fundamental problem with the American empire. And this is why America first was put forward in 2017, because they realized that the America story is broken. It is not over. I repeat, I'm not going to say that dollar is going to fall tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Dollar's gradual debasement trade will continue slowly over next 5-10 years, and you will realize dollar's purchasing power has decreased 70% over last few decades. It is now trading in the reserve currency status, it has come down from 64% in 1990s to 40% today, and gold has overtaken as a bigger reserve asset compared to dollar. And then you have the big names in the world. You have Rishi Sunak, you have Mark Carney, you have Ray Dalio, you have other people openly, ringing the alarm bells. Like the system is almost gone. What we built after World War II, each to its own. अपना सब देखो. Supply chains बदलेंगी. You will have two major supply chains. One of the American supply chain, one the Chinese supply chain, and then you will have the world revolve around it. That is why the role of the middle powers in it, Russia, role of Saudi Arabia, role of India, the largest consumer economy in the world, and largest producer of agriculture products and other manufacturing, smart manufacturing, what we are doing. So all this will going to prove a very pivotal role. With this, I would say we are in a cusp of a historic movement. This is not a normal situation. This is not a normal 2008 debt collapse. This is not a dot-com bubble of 2000. This is an unprecedented manner, because you have even America targeted India on tariffs. 25%. I'll conclude with this. Sorry, one more point and then I'll conclude. So America targeted India with 25% tariff. Today, I want to ask President Donald Trump, who's more isolated? You have Mark Carney you had the German Chancellor Merz in India a few days back. Now you have the European Commission, the mother of all trade deals, being signed in India tomorrow. It's being announced. It will be signed in 6 months' time, subject, with approval of the European Parliament in 6 months' time. And then you have Francis Macron coming in February. You have Mark Carney coming in March for a uranium deal. I thought US tariffs were working. So why is Besant crying and complaining? If we impose 25% tariffs and look, Europeans are not doing anything. They are signing trade deal. Are the Europeans fool? No, they are not fools. Europeans also have to rearm themselves, because the policy dictum under the new defense strategy, under the new security strategy of American administration is clear. We are not going to fight wars for others. We will outsource the wars to others. And that means the whole American continent from north to south is ours. I will not allow anyone to enter. Maduro was an example. Carney going to China has instigated them, and Trump threatened 100% tariffs. Greenland is required to shoot down those ICBMs, the alleged ICBM, which the Americans think the Russians will fire at them. Okay? Because that is it is above the Arctic, and where the ICBMs in the stratosphere will be at the highest in the space, and where you can shoot it down before they land into the American continent. So they want Greenland for that. And once they have the Greenland deal done, which either it's a sovereign purchase, or it's a rights, basing rights, or lease, or a Cyprus model, or a Diego Garcia model, we'll know very soon, what they are negotiating with Denmark. US will withdraw. Mark my words, US is going to withdraw its forward bases in Europe and saying, अपने सवारी अपने सामान की सुरक्षा खुद रखे, हम चले यहाँ से. ठीक है? And that would mean the Europeans will have to rearm themselves. Unfortunately, Europe, over last 20-30 years since the European project began since the mid-1990s, they have been running the social welfare system, giving free checks to everything. और refugees बुलाओ, migration के नीचे रखो, अपनी demography भी destroy करो, और साथ-साथ अपनी industry भी destroy करो, and then you go and ask China to help you, you go ask other countries to help you, and then, it's a disaster in evolution, what Europe has been doing of late. Now they realize that the Americans are no more willing to Europeans were saying, ठीक है, हम तो अपने 2,000 pound के euro के और इनके checks बांटते रहते हैं. The Americans will, provide us security in NATO. खत्म. हो गया. So that era is over now. You have to rearm. If you have to rearm, do defense spending, you will have to cut down your subsidies, your social welfare measures. And that means there will be a revolt inside. That would mean you will have people saying, भैया हम ये फालतू के जो तुमने रेफ्यूजी बुलाए हम इनको खाना क्यों दें, इनको बाहर निकालो यहाँ से. You will have the fiscal deficits in Europe go up like crazy because they will have to spend up their military, military postage in 3-4 days. Which is why to support the European industry to keep their inflation lows, they need cheap oil and cheap energy. Unfortunately, America trapped them into a trap by blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline via Ukrainian lobbyists. And that meant that Europe would get more dependent upon the American LNG, which will be more expensive, and American corporates will have will enjoy the biggest milking cow, which they will have for decades together. So if anyone had more interest in delinking European gas and energy with Russians, it is the Americans. If Europe has to rearm, which MIC will supply it? The American MIC. Again, they stand to benefit. So though MIC is understandable, they have more synergy over there. But for energy and diversification, they thought, okay, let us buy more oil from. So Russia said, okay, अगर directly नहीं मिला, we will send it to the Indian refinery, and Indian refinery बना के आपको देगी, अब वहां से खरीद लो. तो यूरोप said, ठीक है, सस्ता ऑयल मिल रहा तो लेना. क्योंकि अमेरिकन की जो आदत है डबल गेम खेलने का, वो खत्म नहीं होता. वो एक तरफ यूरोप को ब्लेम करते हैं, दूसरी साइड इन्फ्लेशन एक्ट से, चिप एक्ट के जरिए इंसेंटिव देते हैं यूरोपियन इंडस्ट्री को कि तुम यूरोप पे शिफ्ट करो और अमेरिका आ जाओ. तुम जाके अमेरिका में खड़े होते हो, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में खड़े होते हो, और कुछ दिन में जाके फ्रांस की सबमरीन लीड छीन लेते हो, जिसकी वजह से तुम्हारा डिप्लोमेटिक स्टैंड अप होता है. सो यू आर प्लेइंग अ डबल गेम ओवर हियर. One side you want to totally vassalize Europe, you want to deindustrialize and destroy Europe. Other side you want the European industry to move to America and make Europe totally uninhabitable virtually. कि भैया उसको तबाह कर दो. Now Europeans know your problem. President Macron has talked about the American exceptionalism many times because उनमें थोड़ा सा डिगॉल का भूत अभी बाकी है. ठीक है, तो so they say, okay, now we need to hedge America. Where do we go? We go to China or we go to a neutral India, which can give us cheaper energy, refined oil, which can give us cheaper goods, cheaper services, to make sure that our inflation, even if we have to rearm, these Indian MICs can at least be some part of it. So they understand the ploy. They understand the duplicity of the American play. They understand their problem, their own self-created problem. So the world is in a total turmoil at this moment because supply chains are breaking down. Because the hegemon is saying, I am going out. I am walking away from it. I am not going to run this rules-based order. Get lost with it. I've had enough of it. Lutnick was open on World Economic Forum. मेरे से यह भी नहीं चलता है. हो गया. अगर आप मिरान की सुनो, मिलर की सुनो, वो कह रहे हम ये नहीं चलाएंगे. हो गया. रिजर्व करेंसी को why they are targeting BRICS plus? Because they want a slow decline of dollar and not an immediate implosion. कि एकदम से नहीं होना चाहिए. मतलब जो भी होना है बहुत एक ट्रांजिशनरी हो, एक ऐसा ट्रांजिशन हो जहां पे उनको 8-10 साल का वक्त मिल जाए रीशोर करने का. बट व्हाई वुड इंडिया एंड चाइना प्रोवाइड that window? Because if America reshores, they won't need Chinese to a greater extent. They will build their own supply chain with the Europeans and other countries in South America. Chile, it is rich in copper. Bolivia and other lithium. Saudi Arabia, oil. Venezuela, oil. Australia and rare earths. They won't need. The Chinese also know these 10 years, if we allow the Americans to rebuild and reshore, we are out of the game. They will come equal. But whatever advantage we have gained in the last 20-30 years will be lost once again. So this is the moment next 4-5 years. It will define what happened, and which is why you have the maximum hedging going on, about gold and silver and selling treasuries. So in sum and substance, this world order is breaking down. It is, rather, I would say it has collapsed already. US has withdrawn out of all institutions. Trump won WHO से गए, UN Human Rights से गए, 31 more economic social security council से गए, UN का ऑल्टरनेटिव बोर्ड ऑफ पीस डोनाल्ड ट्रंप बना रहा है. So we all know, what kind of, crazy developments are happening. It's almost as good as gone. So we should prepare for the worst. And one last point, that is 1991 IMF का जो पूरा किस्सा था जो हमारा हुआ था, वो जब when we got balance of payment crisis था, at that time IMF and World Bank put these conditions on us that you will remove the PDS system, you will remove the agriculture subsidies, you will corporatize your agriculture, and no government, I say no government since 1991 has done that. Rather 2013 में Bali Peace Clause में we won कि हम 10% तक का टोटल जो है हम अपनी फूड सब्सिडी देंगे, जिसकी वजह से फूड सब्सिडी एक्ट आया था इंडिया में 2013 में. It's because Global South rallied together. South Africa and China, they all supported India at that time, and we got that Bali Peace Clause. So now, when you see the fight over trade and agriculture, it is the same commitment with the Americans are asking. आपने 91 में promise किया था, you never delivered on that. You do it. We said it is a political landmine. हम नहीं कर सकते हैं. हमारा किसान वैसे ही marginalized है, वो आपके कॉर्पोरेट्स के सामने compete नहीं कर पाएगा. और आपका जीएमओ आपको फ्लड करेगा. हमारा लॉ है पार्लियामेंट का, हमारी सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जजमेंट्स है, इस पे हम लोग उस लॉ को ओवरनाइट नहीं बदल सकते हैं. देयर आर लीगल इम्पेडिमेंट्स इन इम्प्लीमेंटिंग द ट्रेड डील. अब आपकी एक ट्रेड डील यू के साथ हुई एग्रीकल्चर छोड़ के, दूसरी ट्रेड डील आपकी डेयरी की हुई है, उसको छोड़ के, न्यूजीलैंड के साथ छोड़ के आपने डेयरी का एग्जम्पशन वहां से भी ले लिया. और अगर आप यूएस के सामने दोनों को गिव अप कर दोगे, then these two countries, these two blocks will say, भैया फिर हमसे का exemption लिया था. So that means you have sent a message to Washington that agriculture and dairy is a no-go. That means trade deal अभी कुछ नहीं होने वाली है. जितने मर्जी आप चाय समोसे खिला लो, delegation बुलवा लो, till the time the Trump administration bends on these issues, because India is not going to go back. It can't go back now. The US will not agree. Rather वो तो कहते हैं data localization laws भी हटाओ. क्यों चाहिए? वो साथ में कहते हैं कि ई कॉमर्स फिनटेक रूल जो आपने अपने रुपए को और अपने यूपीआई को दे रखा, मास्टर कार्ड वीजा को जो नॉन ट्रेड बैरियर है, ये भी हटाओ. पर दे आर लिटरली गॉन क्रेजी. So this is the problem. I do not see an impasse to this Indo-US trade issues coming in next few months. This administration is hell-bent on destroying whatever little is left out of it. और इसके कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस क्या होंगे, इंडिया क्या कर सकता है आगे जाके, वी विल डिस्कस एज वी गो अहेड इन द स्पेस. सॉरी आई टुक अ बिट ऑफ टाइम, बट आई नीडेड टू
Not
एक्सप्लेन
at
दिस
all.
होल. या
Can I recommend to everybody who's joined late, please listen from the beginning. I mean, this is a master class. This is absolutely brilliant. Matlab, we are very, very fortunate to go through this word by word. But I also want to take the opportunity now, Navruji, before I just housekeeping. Just one that welcome to Sanchit. Sanchit is the guy who taught me how to run spaces. Sanchit, welcome, and he's also co-host of the space. So thank you, Sanchit. Ravi, long time no see. Great to see you. Sagad, again back on spaces together. And Sid, lovely to see you. You've been a great champion, and definitely, finally, we made it to a space together. I have not been doing spaces for some time, so it's great. And just house rules, guys. We have about 300 people here. We only have 5 people who have retweeted the space. Can you please retweet the space and please share it extensively? We have just got started. It's going to be a very intense and exciting time. We have amazing co-hosts today, Zahak, Amit, and Sanchit. And of course, Sid has been running many spaces here in North America, so it's been amazing. And Ravi, of course, sitting in Scotland, and UK. I don't know where you are, Ravi, right now. I'm in a transit. I'm right now in Africa. I'm going to Delhi next week for the factory visit and so on and so forth. But Navruji, just absolutely brilliant. So before I give it to Amit or Zahak, Sanchit, do you want to just say a few words as a co-host, please?
No, it's always a delight to hear Navroop Bhai. Long time, he has an exceptional, you can say, geopolitical intellect. And it was wonderful hearing him, the way he was linking the geography, the history, and the power dynamics. And it shows a very high level of understanding as usual. So I've been listening to him and long time interacting with you, Navroop Bhai. It's a delight to hear you again. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. I know that Ravi, your hand is up, but let me give it to the co-host, to say a few words, and then give it to you, Ravi, and then we'll slowly get into the next part of it, more questions and answers, and we'll really deep dive into all aspects and try to dissect each and every point, and also this cusp of 26th night and 27th, which is going to be very interesting, and the markets, the way the markets will respond, will be interesting to see the European markets, US and India, and of the rest of the world. So, Amit, you had a point before we give it to Ravi.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ravi bhai. तो मेरा प्रश्न है नवरूप भाई से, तो नमस्कार नवरूप जी. One thing that we often not talk about enough is this COVID. I mean, the impact of COVID on this, triggering this new world order, or usme, I mean, was it part of the plan, or was it a spillover that came out of syllabus? The whole medical lobby that was there, their role in it, also the India's response to the crisis, the way we did that, handle that, the role of World Health Organization, that itself, I believe, did a lot of damage to the reputation of UNO overall. The way UNO responded to that kind of a global crisis was, I mean, I think everyone realized that how insufficient it was or how disastrous it was, but we do not talk about it a lot. वो हश हश सा हो जाता है. उसके बारे में थोड़ा सा अपना पर्सपेक्टिव देना चाहेंगे नवरूप जी. What role did COVID play in this whole game that you have explained in the last 10 years?
Great. I think this is a missing jigsaw puzzle which we also need to solve. Great, Amit bhai, good question. Okay. इसमें COVID was one. It was an accidental leak of the pathogen from the Wuhan lab, where the research on the bat coronaviruses were being funded by NIH, that is National Institutes of Health, and NIAID under Dr. Fauci from USA. The whole research of gain of function research, where they will they will make chimeric viruses, they will induce artificial genes, try to make it more virulent, and it was supposed to be spread on the bats in those caves in China, where they would see the impact of it. But unfortunately, during the research, few of the scientists got infected, and that is how the virus spilled out. This is not me. I wrote the book on this in 2002. And in March, April 2002, and post that, so many US intelligence drafts, congressional committees have concluded that it was an accidental leak from the Wuhan lab. Gain of function was, gain of function reserve in Wuhan, जो इन्होंने US ने sponsor करा था. It was a virus made in China for research for bat vaccines, which accidentally got released. The research was funded by United States of America. This COVID thing exposed another problem. You have the Chinese holding the whole masks. You had the problem of medicines, antivirals and APIs to make those medicines. You had Americans with the shortage of ventilators. President Trump had to invoke the Defense Production Act to get the ventilators going. That is when the US also realized that it did not even have the basic medicines and the basic system to support itself during a pandemic or a health emergency. That is why in 2021, Biden administration ने Washington में Quad Summit में declare किया था कि all the 4 countries will get together and make sure the supply chains are de-risked. De-risk means, one is reshore and another de-risking. De-risking means we reduce the reliance on China for APIs. And India was considered to be a pivotal part of this declaration because India is called the pharmacy of the world. We have the largest generic pharma and the R&D pharma in India, CDMO pharma, जो लोग बनाते हैं यहाँ पे, जो APIs वगैरह बनाते हैं, right? Though we are dependent upon China to a great extent, but उसको dependent को खत्म करने के लिए ये एक declaration सितंबर 2021 में हुई थी. Unfortunately, उस पर कोई action नहीं हुआ है. मतलब यूएस ने कुछ ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट नहीं दिखाया। देन 2023 में इंडिया ऑल्सो बिकेम पार्ट ऑफ द मिनरल सिक्योरिटी पार्टनरशिप अंडर बाइडेन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन। जब जून 2023 में हम लोग गए, मोदी जी जब गए थे बाइडेन को मिलने के लिए व्हाइट हाउस में, एंड देन ये सब चीजें मतलब इंडिया वाज बीइंग viewed as a very critical partner to US's restructuring of supply chains from minerals to pharma to APIs to all other aspects. But herein comes Trump, who I guided by Robert Lighthizer, whose book says that to target India, you need to target the Indian government. To bend them, you need to target 7 to 8 billionaires who actually work with the Indian government. There's a quote from that book. No trade is free. रॉबर्ट लाइटहाइजर की किताब है, आप सब पढ़िएगा। उसमें इंडिया का आप इंडिया उसमें कंट्रोल एफ करेंगे, आपको मिल जाएगा। दे टॉक अबाउट पीयूष गोयल in that book. They talk about how Indian bureaucracy is slow कि ये जल्दी मानती नहीं है, तो हमें कोई यूनिलैटरल डिसीजन लेने पड़ेंगे इंडिया को सीधा करने के लिए। ये ट्रम्प का मेंटर है बाय द वे, और ये 2018-19 में आई थिंक ये उनके फर्स्ट टर्म के बाद की किताब है। तो पीपल वर शेयरिंग ट्रम्प इन इंडिया कि हाँ ट्रम्प आएगा, मजा आ जाएगा। मतलब उन लोगों को ये किताब पढ़नी चाहिए थी बिफोर डिसाइडिंग कि आप लोगों ने कहाँ वोट किया या क्या सोच रहे थे आप लोग। अब उस किताब में ये भी लिखा है कि हम लोगों को इसके बाद अगर भारत की सरकार को टारगेट करना है तो उन्होंने तो देवर हैविंग अ कन्वर्सेशन इन इंडिया, दे वर सेइंग वी नीड टू टारगेट 14-15 बिलियनर्स, तो ओलिगार्क्स इन इंडिया जो सरकार के प्रो होते हैं, इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट। तो उन्होंने कहा तो जो इंडिया का बंदा था या कोई जो बंदा था जो इनसे बात कर रहा था, तो नो नॉट 15, देयर आर ओनली 6 to 7, यू नीड टू टारगेट देम। तुम उनकी नस दबाओ, भारत सरकार झुकेगी। ये दिस वॉज द, अगर कुरूढ़ भाषा में बोलूं, किताब में ये लिखा हुआ है, उसका मतलब ये था। और वही काम ट्रम्प एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ने आते ही चालू किया, जहां पे आपके आईटी जायंट्स को H1B पे टारगेट किया गया। जब आपकी मार्केट यहाँ खुलती थी, ट्रम्प रात को बैठ के वहां से ट्वीट करता था H1B को लेके। फिर आपके अदानी ग्रुप के डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ जस्टिस प्रोसिक्यूशन, फिर बेसेंट आता है और वो बोलता है कि देखो रिलायंस जो है आर्बिट्राज कमा रहा है रशियन ऑयल को लेके। तो देयर वाज अ मेथड टू दिस मैडनेस बाय व्हाइट हाउस, और वो मैडनेस खत्म नहीं हुई है। अगर सेनेटर टेड क्रूज का कल जो बयान आया है कि यूएस इज ऑलरेडी डूइंग ऑल दिस स्टफ, मतलब ये वांस और नवारो और बेसेंट सबको जो अनलीश किया गया था लास्ट ईयर to target India, to do all that shilling propaganda on India, it was all based out of that. You target these billionaires, you target these oligarchs, and you see the government. Unfortunately, what they don't realize is the government still cannot give up. Even if you target them, they cannot give up agriculture and dairy, because that is the political capital of government of India. So COVID was instrumental in exposing those inadequacies in supply chains. And just after COVID happened, the Russian war, which led to the war in Ukraine, which led to Russia's reserves be confiscated, which said the US का जो एक trust system था euro dollar का, वो टूट गया. And which is why the central banks जो है US treasury बेचना चालू हो गए और gold और silver खरीदना चालू हो गए. And here we are today. This is about it.
Thank you so much, नवरूप जी भाई। जी जहाक जी प्लीज।
जी हाँ, नवरूप जी, मैं ये पूछना चाहूंगा यहाँ पे, आई थिंक आई शुड आस्क दिस इन हिंदी, क्योंकि अक्सर लोग तो हिंदी के ही हैं यहाँ पे। नवरूप जी, जो रिसेंटली चल रहा था यूएस और ईरान को लेकर, इसमें सऊदी अरब, मिडिल ईस्ट एक्टर्स जो रहे हैं, सऊदी अरब, ओमान एंड कतार, दे सेड दैट विल नॉट गिव बेसिस टू द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स टू अटैक ईरान। तो इसमें कुछ एक्सपर्ट्स का ये कहना था कि दे सेड इट नॉट आउट ऑफ सिंपैथी, बट इसलिए कि ईरान का अगर ऑयल मार्केट में आता है तो फिर उसकी वजह से जो है ना, सऊदी का ऑयल जो है उसकी रिलेवेंसी खत्म हो जाती है, और फिर इस तरह से टूरिज्म भी जो है वो ईरान का बहुत ज्यादा बूस्ट करने लगता है, और फिर सऊदी का टूरिज्म या फिर इनका टूरिज्म गिर जाता है। सो हाउ डू यू सी दैट? मतलब ये क्या इसमें कुछ सच्चाई है? जो ग्लोबल ऑर्डर चेंज हो रहा है, इसमें कुछ सच्चाई है या फिर ये कोई कॉन्स्पिरेसी थ्योरी है?
Brilliant, again a brilliant question. And इसमें अभी इसमें मुझे थोड़ा सा तो लंबा एक्सप्लेनेशन है, बट मैं I'd want, because this is the crux of what is happening
Please
in
take your time.
मिडिल ईस्ट में जो चल रहा है, ठीक है। अब मिडिल ईस्ट में आप अगर सऊदी अरेबिया का रोल समझें तो सऊदी अरेबिया की 3-4 प्रॉब्लम्स थे। नंबर 1, सऊदी अरेबिया को राष्ट्रपति ओबामा के दौरान 2009 में एक पॉलिसी बनती है जिसको कहा जाता है प्रेसिडेंशियल स्टडी डायरेक्टिव 11, विच इज कॉल्ड PSD 11, जो अभी तक डिक्लासिफाइड है और डिक्लासिफाइड नहीं किया गया है डिस्पाइट ट्रम्प 2 टर्म्स। ठीक है, अगर आप स्टेट डिपार्टमेंट के ओबामा आर्काइव्स में जाके पढ़ेंगे तो आपको उसमें मिलेगा दैट ओबामा व्हाइट हाउस पे दैट टॉक्स अबाउट the regime change in Middle East via Arab Spring of installing the Muslim Brotherhood government. Mohammed Morsi, Egypt, Tunisia, Syria, Bahrain में रिवोल्ट कराया, यमन में रिवोल्ट करवाया. These were all parts of the same tool. At that time, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf countries were, you cover the Middle East. The Gulf monarchies are steadfastly against the ideology of the political Muslim Brotherhood. At that time, I'm talking. Okay? Which is why the Saudi Arabians, the Emiratis, at that time, please take it at the time of 2010, 11, 12, at that time, and Egypt, because Mohammed Morsi was, got in Egypt. And you had State Department, Huma Abedin and Clinton engaging with the Muslim Brotherhood leaders in State Department. The same Muslim Brotherhood, which is banned as a terror organization in the Gulf states, which was responsible in assassination of General Anwar Sadat of Egypt, which has branches in so many countries across the world. Even Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh is also a front of Muslim Brotherhood, an offshoot kind of same ideology. ठीक है, पाकिस्तान में भी इनका चार्टर है और अभी 6 जनवरी को इनकी टर्की में बहुत बड़ी अर्दोगान के अंदर इनकी नीचे मीटिंग हुई है. अब सबसे बड़े पैटर्न्स जो थे मुस्लिम ब्रदरहुड के मिडिल ईस्ट में थे वो है आपकी टर्की और वो है आपका फंडर है कतर. अब सऊदी अरेबिया, आपको याद होगा GCC क्राइसिस हुआ था, कतर को सस्पेंड कर दिया था, 2-3 साल सऊदी अरेबिया ने टारगेट किया था बिकॉज एट दैट टाइम देवर सेट. इस दौरान 2014 में यूएस शेल आता है, शेल ऑयल का रेवोल्यूशन आता है. अमेरिका बिकम्स द बिगेस्ट सप्लायर ऑफ ऑयल एंड शेल एंड सऊदी फील्स की हमारी लेवरेज खत्म हो रही है. एंड दिस लिए हमारा जो 1945 का जो अग्रीमेंट है जो हमने FDR के साथ किया था, किंग का उस टाइम पे ऑयल को लेकर और पैलेस्टीन को लेके, वो अमेरिका ने प्रॉपरली ऑनर नहीं करा है. तो इसीलिए द सऊदी अरेबियंस, मोहम्मद बिन सलमान एज प्राइम मिनिस्टर, वेंट इनटू एन ऑयल वॉर. ठीक है, विद टू बीट द यूएस शेल, गेट द ऑयल प्राइसेस डाउन सो दैट द यूएस शेल बिकम्स अनवायबल एंड इट क्रैशेस. He loses the war. Americans are able to sustain at whatever the cost. Okay. Then comes Biden administration, which denotified. Sorry. Then you have Obama, doing the nuclear deal, JCPOA with Iran. At that time, because Iran had the Shia crescent and they were not happy with, the Saudi Arabians were trying to fund the rebels in Syria and all that stuff was going on against President Assad because Shia versus Sunni vortex was playing out at that time over there. Right? You had the Royal Jordanian Air Force के जरिए पूरा का पूरा एयरलिफ्ट हो रहा था सीरिया के अंदर. अगर वो पूरा covered है, it's the whole detail. I don't want to go into that region once again. But then Trump comes. He rips apart JCPOA. He assassinates your General Soleimani at Baghdad airport. And that was a turning point. Because Zarif and Rouhani were talking to the EU, the peaceniks, who were trying to get something on top. But unfortunately, Trump, under whatever influence was from Israel or Netanyahu, I really don't know. People can decipher and read themselves, read between the lines. He decided to rip apart the JCPOA कि भैया nuclear deterrence को properly cover नहीं हुआ है. बहुत snapback, मतलब 10 साल में ये expire हो जाएगा, 20 साल में expire हो जाएगा, ballistic missile की coverage नहीं है. Israel had many grievances, some genuine, some not so genuine. But then उसको लेके इन्होंने जनरल सुलेमानी को मारा. उसके बाद से IRGC का इनके साथ मतलब इनका जो था एक अंडरस्टैंडिंग थी वो टूट गई. Meanwhile, the Saudi Arabians, the Saudis, you had the Yemen conflict beginning, and Yemen में सऊदी अरेबिया को लेके इन्होंने क्या किया? Saudi Arabia went to war with the Emiratis, but then the Emiratis switched to the other side. They founded their own militias, which the Southern Transition Council, which had some Al Qaeda and other Al Qaeda and Yemen figures and other figures as well. And then you had the Saudi Arabians also, and then Biden denotifies Houthi as a terror group. And that leads to Saudi Arabia saying, भाई ये चल क्या रहा है? एक राष्ट्रपति आता है, वो आके पहले जो है मुस्लिम ब्रदरहुड को करता है, दूसरा राष्ट्रपति आता है, वो सेल रेवोल्यूशन करता है, तीसरा राष्ट्रपति आता है, वो हूती को डिनोटिफाई कर देता है. Are the Americans reliable or not reliable? What should we do? But till 2023, Saudi Arabians continue to be on a very opening path toward the state of Israel. The Emiratis are, they signed the Abraham Accords, they open up, they have the diplomacy, they have the flight diplomacy, and they're working together with Israel even today, as of today. However, the Saudi Arabians को जब ये गाजा की जब हमास के बाद जब गाजा की वॉर चालू होती है, the Saudi Arabians बिखर जाते हैं for understandable reason, because they think we are the custodians of the holy sites of Islam, and we cannot allow, there's a popular sentiment what is happening in Gaza and what is happening, we cannot allow that to go away. We cannot wish it away. The Emiratis do not have that radicalized or that kind of a religious thought to deal with. They are a more modern state. The Saudi Arabians are not that modern. Mohammed bin Salman wants to reform the state by so many decrees he had passed. But they have to also manage the popular sentiment. So which is why they said कि भैया आपका जो अब्राहम अकॉर्ड का था वो चला गया. And I read a tweet with it. Netanyahu said नहीं होता तो होता, doesn't matter, चलेगा. We have lived without Saudi Arabia for decades. We can live again. In the meanwhile, 2023 में सऊदी अरेबिया और ईरान के बीच में एक ब्रेक थ्रू होता है, पीस बनता है, और वो पीस की ब्रोकरिंग चाइना करवाता है. वेरी इंटरेस्टिंगली. और उसके बाद इट इज सऊदी अरेबियन जो ओपेक प्लस में रशिया के साथ मिलकर एंगेज करते हैं ट्रेड को, और उसके बाद 2023 से वो चाइना के साथ युआन में फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करना ट्रेड कर देते हैं. And saying to America, look, we will sell oil in dollars. We have no problem. We are not going away from that agreement of the petrodollar, but we will also sell in other currencies if need to. You cannot stop us.
Navruji, can you just talk about this? Why this petro yuan is such a big game changer?
Yep. I'm going to talk about it. So now you have countries like Saudi Arabia, which are dealing with, which are selling oil to China in yuan, right? Commodity trade virtually. You have Iran, which is selling oil to China in yuan. You have Russia, which is selling oil to China, oil and gas, again in yuan. So a large section of the world, oil trade and gas trade and commodities are getting settled in yuan. This has not happened, which is why the dollar share of reserve currency has fallen down from 64% to 40%. Yuan is also part of IMF's special drawing reserves. So it has got a certain condition that every country needs to have the yuan thing. But on a broader theme, इसको yuan पे मैं ज़्यादा digress नहीं करता, I'll keep it to the Middle East. So now you have the Saudi Arabians working with the Russians and OPEC Plus. You have the Saudi Arabians working with the Chinese. At the same time, the Saudi Arabians, when they see the Shia crescent break apart, Hamas and Hezbollah, Hamas was taken out of Gaza. Hezbollah, pager bombings, what we saw, what happened. Then Bashar al-Assad, and then comes the Syria post. And now I'm not trying to rope in the Syria thing, which has happened very recently. Okay. End of 2024, you have Syria, where you see Rashtrapati Erdogan, yani President Erdogan of Turkey, he tries to use Ahmad al-Shara, alias al-Jolani, who was an ex-ISIS member, ex-Al-Qaeda, then left, he left Zawahiri, and then he formed Hayat al-Sham, HTS, his organization in Idlib. governorate, along with the help of the Turkish intelligence, MIT. And just when they were negotiating Ukraine, or they were doing, and there was a transition happening in America of power from Biden to Trump, that is when they launched this operation in the end of 2024 to run through Syria's heartland, because Bashar al-Assad कमजोर हो चुका था, Hezbollah decapitate हो चुका था, Nasr Allah मर चुका था, Hamas जा चुकी थी, तो शिया मिलिशिया तितर बितर हो चुके थे. And that led to the collapse of the Assad regime very fast. And this was in sync with Israel, जिसने नीचे ड्रूज के एरिया को सिक्योर किया, माउंट हेरमोन को कैप्चर किया, और आज ऐसे ही असद गिरा, उसके बाद से उन्होंने बॉम्बिंग रेड्स करके सीरिया की मिलिट्री को और सीरिया की एयरफोर्स को डिकैपिटेट कर दिया, कि वो रेजिस्टेंस दिखाने लायक भी ना रहे, कि उसकी एक रीजनल डोमिनेंस रहे सदर्न रीजन. At the same time, the Israelis had an idea of using the Druze in the south, जिसको उन्होंने आर्म किया, and the Kurds in the north, which were acting as a proxies for them, and for the Americans who had bases in northeastern Syria, in Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, जो सीरिया का ऑयल और गैस हार्टलैंड था, ठीक है, कि हम इसको as a counter tool use करेंगे to a revisionist Turkey which wants to impose the Ottoman kind of an expansionism में जो आगे बढ़ना चाहता है, अर्दोगान का टर्की. And now what happened, you had the kind of this stalemate continuing in Syria between Ahmad al-Shara, जिस पे sanctions हटे, Trump मिला, सब कुछ हुआ, उसको White House भी बुलाया. This February, you had the meeting in, what you say, your, क्या कहते हैं आपका, Paris में, where you had the trilateral talk between the Turkey, Syria and America, where they decided that that Ahmad al-Shara's Syrian Arab army, which is made up of some Qaeda militia, some former ISIS fighters working with Julanis, some Turkmens, some Uyghurs, okay? All these, jihadist kind of groups, जो Turkey ने assemble करके रखे हुए हैं वहाँ पे, that they are going to make a move toward the Kurdi area, and then they will, try to impress upon the Kurds that we need to open fronts into Iran, northern Iran, which is the northern Kurdi area, PAJK, जो उनका जो northern जो area में Kurds है. अब यहाँ पे क्या होता है, ये लोग जो है दिसंबर 2025 यानी लास्ट ईयर के एंड पे ये लोग शुरू करते हैं ये सारा आपका they start the whole process of instigating protest into Iran, Starlink terminal. Russia and China provide them electronic warfare. They are able to jam Starlink. Protest में crackdown होता है, and you see a sudden downsurge in protest and they collapse. Brutality हुई नहीं हुई वो secondary meaning है. I'm just going to do geopolitics of it. ठीक है. अब उसके बाद they realize that now they are blinded because Starlink terminals have been taken down, which were used as a tool by the Pentagon. So अब क्या होता है, now they have to switch to a plan B. They need a regime change in Iran because the Iranian regime is actively pursuing things which is contrary to the American-Israeli dynamics. So now अब ये लोग क्या करते हैं, यहाँ पे ये डिसाइड होता है कि प्लान बी एक्टिवेट किया जाए. प्लान बी में है कि नॉर्दर्न ईरान में इन्वेस्टिगेट किया जाए, जिसमें अर्दोगान विल प्ले अ क्रिटिकल रोल, विच इज बाय टॉम बैरक, विच हु इज एन एनवॉय ऑफ अमेरिका टू टर्की. He double crosses, sells out Kurds. The moment the Syrian Arab army, formed of Turkish militias and all those jihadist groups, approaches the Kurdish areas, capture Raqqa, capture Deir ez-Zor, and the US forces don't even put up a fight, and they give up all oil and gas. Then the American Tom Barrack goes to Kurdistan of Iraq, talk to Mahmoud Barzani over there, which are the Peshmerga forces, and he tells Abdil and the commander of the Kurdi forces and Barzani that, look, you need to fight along with the Syrian Arab army and the jihadists which are gathered, which the Turkey are gathered in Syria, and open a front towards northern Iran. The Iraqi Kurds and the Syrian Kurds says nothing doing. We are freedom fighters. We are not your mercenaries. We were promised an independent Kurdistan, and we are not going to do this in that meeting. And Tom Barrack says, then get ready to be bombed. Within 30 minutes, hundreds of drones from Turkey come and they start bombing the Kurdish village, and the massacres of the Kurds start in northeastern Syria. And that is when Israel erupts. You are reducing, just for the American double cross, you are reducing our leverage against Erdogan, because the whole Syrian Arab state is now united under Erdogan's militias. We have a bigger threat on our border than we had 2 months back. Which is why you see the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal go, and you have Lindsey Graham going crazy over it, because तुम ये क्या कर रहे हो कुर्दियों के साथ, because तुम उनका strategic assets को neutralize कराने में कामयाब हो गए. टॉम बैरेक ने जो किया, जो यूएस एनवॉय, यहां तक बोला जाए टॉम बैरेक को वापस बुलाया जाए और सेनेट के आगे रखा जाए कि उसने क्या किया ये. तो अब आप देख रहे हैं, और इसीलिए इजराइल रिलक्टेंट है बोर्ड ऑफ पीस में आने के लिए, क्योंकि तुमने टर्की को और कतर को सबको बिठा रखा है. देन यू वांट टू आल्सो इंस्टिगेट द बलोच प्रोविंस. Use Jandullah, which is Jaish al-Adal, through Pakistan's Balochistan province, hire terror groups and invite Balochistan, not realizing for General Mounin that if you ignite a separate demand for a separate Balochistan over here, you will end up also igniting separatism in the Pakistani Balochistan for an independent Balochistan state. And the Wall Street Journal says a fractured Iran is not a problem at all. It was an artificial state. So here you have a justification coming through the propaganda machine. कि हमें करना है. Now when they see when the Arab powers see this kind of move, Turkey realizes, if you remember when Turkey has backstabbed Russia in Syria, when they had done the original coup against Assad, Alexander Dugin had said, आज आपने हमें betray किया है, but remember you will also be betrayed one day, and we will not come then. And that is exactly because Turkey knows its ultimate battle is going to be with Israel in the Middle East, which wants to create a greater Israel, and Turkey wants to recreate the Ottoman Empire. So these two ideologies are going to ultimately clash, which is why Turkey is seeking to embed itself with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan in a trilateral defense pact. You have these three powers trying to hedge against the Americans, कि हमें American military, American arsenal पे dependent ना हो पड़े, because America is not reliable. If it can dump its decades-old NATO ally in Europe and leave it at Russia, it can do with us as well. It can also provide its military to Israel when we finally get into a battle with Turkey or other groups in Syria. So you have the Middle East on a tinder box. The powder keg पूरा का पूरा फैल चुका है. खाली एक spark की जरूरत है. And the whole region will ignite. You have the jihadists who have assembled. You want to fracture Iran. Balochistan could blow up. The Kurdis could blow up. You have the Syrian theater which could blow up. And then you have the North African theater, where you have Israel declaring a Somaliland, जिसके retaliation में Saudi Arabia UAE को rights deny कर देता है कि you will not overfly the military cargo towards us, over us, and do that. So सुदान में जो ये आरसीएफ को मार रहे हैं, आरएसएफ को जिसको यूएई स्पॉन्सर कर रहा है, उसके खिलाफ खार्तूम में जो पोर्ट ऑफ सुदान और इसके लिए सऊदी अरेबिया मार रहा है. So you have a different rivalry playing over there. Egypt is also on board with Saudi Arabia. Qatar is also on board with Saudi Arabia. Oman is also on board with Saudi Arabia. Turkey wants to insert itself. Pakistan is already there. You have a whole kind of an Islamic alliance building up, because they think America is unreliable and they fear a dominant Israel on the Middle Eastern continent after the Shia crescent has been taken down. This is the crux of the geopolitical sense what I see is happening in the Middle East. Oil and dollar, petrodollar is a subset. ईरान में जो थोड़ा चेंज हुआ, I just, ईरान की सबसे बड़ी गलती क्या है? Since the time of Queen Victoria in 1860s, when the British Empire and the Russian Empire fought in near the Pamirs of Afghanistan, that is when they decided the Russian Empire will not come down for trade in Persia and or the British India, and they decided कि भैया, which is why Pakistan was also formed as a part of the Great Game. Gilgit Baltistan में जो scouts का revolt था, और वहां पे उनको bases देना, वहां से U-2 planes उड़ाना, Soviet nuclear program पे करना. This was all the Anglo-American establishment trying to make sure that the communist powers never land up in the warm water ports or the critical trade or energy supply routes of the Persian Gulf. इवन आपका सेवास्टोपोल का जो आपका ब्लैक सी का जो क्राइमिया का बेस है, वो भी रशिया का इकलौता वार्म वाटर पोर्ट है जिसको लेके यूक्रेन में इन्होंने मैदान का कुक कराया था. खोमेनी जाता है, सीआईए किल लिस्ट देती है, न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स में ये रिपोर्टेड है, मैं नहीं बोल रहा. इस्लाम इन ईरान नाम की फाइल है जिसमें ये डिक्लासिफाइड सीआईए फाइल है जिसमें बोला था कि खोमेनी 1963 से ऑलरेडी राउतुल्ला खोमेनी अर्लियर वन वाज इन टच विद द सीआईए सिंस 1963. पेरिस में एम्बेसी की पूरे रिकॉर्ड है, जो पेरिस में खोमेनी वाज एंगेजिंग विद अमेरिकन एम्बेसी रेगुलरली बिफोर फ्लाइंग डाउन फ्रॉम पेरिस टू तेहरान. एंड देन तेहरान में ये आते ही, बिकॉज वहां सोवियत का अफगान इन्वेजन हो जाता है, तो खोमेनी गोज अगेंस्ट मॉस्को से मैं 1912 की ट्रीटी जो है, 1905 1912 की ट्रीटी आपके साथ रिन्यू नहीं करूंगा. ईरान विल स्टे न्यूट्रल, इट विल नॉट ईदर साइड विद एंग्लोज और नॉट इट विल साइड विद द मॉस्को रशिया के खिलाफ, सोवियत यूनियन के खिलाफ. एंड दैट इज व्हाई ईरान एज अ स्टेट कंटिन्यू टू थ्राइव एंड सर्वाइव फ्रॉम दैट टाइम ऑनवर्ड्स. बिकॉज रानी विक्टोरिया के तरफ से तो एंग्लो की पॉलिसी थी कि वो पॉलिसी हम इनको नीचे नहीं आने देंगे. बट जैसे कि ट्रंप जनरल सुलेमानी को असैसिनेट करता है 2021 में, the IRGC, which is the state within the state, which runs military, which runs oil, which runs industries, which runs everything, is like a Pakistani military in uniform. The core of Iranian state is IRGC. It's not the mullahs; they are ornamental. Mullahs are just the clerical elite. Below are the IRGC. So if you have to take down Iran, you have to take out the IRGC first. And that is a very difficult ploy for the Americans. इसलिए they're going with the plan B over now. तभी strikes delay हुई हैं. ठीक है? Now, once they took out General Soleimani in January 2021, July, May, they signed a deal with Russia, China, BRI, $400 billion for 25 years. And oil trade in yuan. Then they signed in January of 2025. They signed a defense pact. They finally renewed the defense agreement with America, with Russia. जो खोमेनी ने नहीं किया, वो इस ईरान ने फिर कर मारा. So Iran violated all the norms which the West did not want, from selling oil in yuan to allowing Chinese communists to access the Persian Gulf in BRI, to signing a defense pact with Russia, to providing drones to Russia in the Ukraine war, and which is why we are on the cusp of a new war in Iran, probably unfolding in the next few days or weeks. This is the story of Middle East. And if Pakistan thinks it will survive, no, sorry. अगर सिस्तान बलोचिस्तान उबला तो पाकिस्तान का बलोचिस्तान भी उबलेगा, और पश्तून्स भी मांगेंगे कि हमें फाटा और नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न प्रोविंस के हमें एरियाज चाहिए. पाकिस्तान विल आल्सो नॉट सर्वाइव. इट इज द लोन न्यूक्लियर पावर स्टेट. और जो नाफरमानी पाकिस्तान ने करी है, टर्की और सऊदी अरेबिया को न्यूक्लियर कवर देने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, द इजरायलीज विल नॉट फॉरगिव इट, एंड पाकिस्तान विल बी इक्वली डीन्यूक्लियराइज्ड इन ड्यू कोर्स ऑफ टाइम. You take my word for that. इन्होंने गलती करी, ये बहुत बड़ी. They will realize it. An Erdogan with a nuclear umbrella breathing next door to Israel is a dear threat for them. That's about it.
Thank you, Navroopji. Thank you very much. I think this is such a fantastic, as Nitya ji, welcome please. As she put it, this is one of the most amazing spaces I've been in a long time. We're so lucky that we have all the Maharathis, sitting on our space today. So Ravi, I know that you've been very patient. Ravi, over to you because you raised your hand first and we're coming to you now.
Thank you. So I wanted to carry on what Navroopji was saying, but take a slightly different path. The path that I want to take is through the Mahabharata. So for those that don't know me, my name is Ravi. I work as a researcher, I've worked for a think tank and occasionally write stuff. The reason why I want to take this path is because it's actually, there's a very important moment in the Mahabharata where I think it's Gangapatra Bhishma says that if it's not in the Mahabharata, then it's not in the world. And no, there can't be a better example than what's happening to America as an example of this. So for those who haven't read the Mahabharata, I encourage you to do so. It's a very, very enlightening book, and it's full of life lessons. But the point, or the key point of the Mahabharata, or the central thrust behind it, is succession planning. So at the start of the Mahabharata, Raja Bharat decides that actually none of my 9 children are remotely capable of running the kingdom, and goes finds the son of a Brahmin who is capable and installs him on the throne as the next king. Now, what that is an indication of is that it's not about the progeny. It's not about, the next about who's the ideal person for the job, who can handle this mantle, and finding that individual to take over the state. The function of the Raja in the Mahabharata is much like a president, because there is what's called an Ashtapradhan that sits underneath the Raja, a council of ministers that help govern and give advice and do all sorts. And they work in tandem, and they advise the king what they should do and what not. And this is important. So what the premise behind this is, and this is something that Janakya talks about quite a lot, is the oscillation of society. The constant swinging between, in some cases, liberalism and conservatism, between extremes, and that the purpose of the Raja and the function of the Ashtapradhan is to minimize these oscillations as much as possible, because it's in that stillness and in that middle where peace, prosperity, and of the Raja or the society lives. So the whole journey of Lord Krishna through the Mahabharata is correcting this mistake, where Shantanu changes this model going from, rather than picking the best person for the job, in order to get married, and Gangapatra Bhishma making his vow not to take the throne, causes this succession planning now, where over successive generations, it eventually leads to the Mahabharata, this kind of cataclysmic conflict. Now, the Americans did something similar. So for those that don't know, and I'm sure Navruchi will weigh in on this, that when the financial crash happened Black Friday, in the post-1920s, which caused the Great Depression, there were 2 senators, Senator Glass and Senator Stegall, and they were tasked with finding out A, what happened, and B, how to make sure it never happens. And they did this thorough review, and they passed what was called the Glass-Steagall Act, which essentially divided the financial sector so that the risky parts couldn't take a risk with the safe parts, people's pensions, people's savings, and they couldn't gamble them on the stock market. And this one piece of legislation and the political will at that time caused basically the great rise of the American empire, as we can call it. It lifted so many people out of the Great Depression. It did amazing things for their industries, and it did amazing things for the standard of living in the United States. However, there was always a party of people that were opposed to this, and through various machinations and through various legislations, they began to chip away at the Glass-Steagall Act. And the walls that protected basically American middle class began to crumble and began to come down. Now, there's one major thing that was happening that people didn't realize, which was that the Americans were piece by piece selling off their democracy. So there's a case in the 70s, it's called Buckley v. Vallejo. You can go and read it, where basically the Americans decided, no, money does equal free speech. And then in, I think it was early 2000s, maybe even latest 2010, that the Americans decided there is no limit on how much money can be spent on elections. So again, basically what the Americans have done between these 2 pieces of legal framework and legal cases is legalize bribery. Now, what that has done is, coupled with the way that the American presidential system works, is through a president and through the midterms, is they've increased the violence of these oscillations. And what we're seeing now in the American discourse and the American news media is the 2 camps of essentially whether you're liberal or whether you're conservative, whether you're Democrat, whether you're Republican, they are becoming ossified. They're being calcified is I think the correct word, where they're becoming so entrenched that it's basically setting up for either a war of words, a civil war of words, or a genuine civil crisis. Whether it turns violent or not remains to be seen, because there are other kind of checks and balances. But this is the perennial problem that the Mahapharata talks about, which is that when you take away this, when you increase the oscillation between, swinging between extremes, it leads to ruin. Now, what Chanakya was able to fantastically do and successfully create, in my opinion, and which I'm happy to defend, the greatest and longest peacetime and stability of a golden civilization on the planet was through this mechanism, through the system of, well, actually, whether the political change at the top happens, it should not disturb what's happening on the ground. The local people, the local businesses, and the rest of them should not be affected. So when Rajas would go to war, when there was conflict, they weren't out to destroy the thing that they were trying to conquer. So by comparison, the Americans, in their infinite wisdom to offshore their industry, offshore their services, and offshore the rest of it, they've essentially, as Navruji, hollowed out the middle class, and in doing so,
So Ravi,
basically
Ravi,
weakened themselves to a point where the measure of success, the performance of their GDP, and the performance of their billionaire class are now the new metrics by which success is defined, as opposed to, which is the success and the quality of life of the middle class. I don't want to lead
so
into
Ravi,
it, but I just wanted to add that really important part, which is the current setup that we have with the American decision-making process and the structures is only going to intensify, because they
so
can't
can I, Ravi,
undo.
sorry, because
It will take
Ravi,
so much political capital that it would end one of the parties permanently if they were to undo this particular part of
Ravi, I
their
think Ravi
legalization of
is something.
bribery in their
Ravi, can you hear
democratic
us?
he's not able to hear us, right?
Uh,
Ravi, are you
Yeah,
able to
it
hear
seems
us?
Ravi is unable to
yeah,
hear us.
I can hear you. So again,
Oh
I
yeah,
just
Ravi,
wanted to add that
Ravi.
bit where
No, that's
all
really
policies
useful. Can I,
domestically are framed through this oscillation of
Uh,
we have to overcorrect for the other every time we get into positions of power.
so Ravi,
So
I will
every
just,
time
Ravi,
a conservative comes in, they
Ravi,
will overcorrect for a liberal that was there before them, and
I
vice
don't think
yeah,
versa.
he's
So
not
we
Ravi.
have
able to
two
hear.
decisions in
Ravi,
policy,
I'm not
and in
sure if you're
rhetoric,
able to hear
and
Ravi.
in behavior as well. So
I think it'll be better to
I'm going to be
remove him
from
as
my
speaker, then
Americans
he
for a
can
while
come
Yeah,
now.
back.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
just wanted to share that.
Amit,
yeah. Better.
you can remove him as speaker, and then we'll move on. I think just on Ravi's point, I think Navruji, I have a question. I mean, this is a very interesting thing what Ravi said. And Ravi, please join us back. There were some glitches in your, your voice. But on building on your point, can I just ask a question? And maybe Sid, you want to add to it? Having been in America for a long time, just to understand the political system, right? You have the Democrats and you have the Republicans. And I remember many years ago there was this very interesting closed door meeting on looking at the choice between Coke and Pepsi, right? And there's not really a multi-party, so-called really a multi-party system. So I really want to, maybe now we get into the political aspect of it, got into the historical, we've looked at it from a, regional perspective. If you could really take your points on where is the American political system? Clearly it's not really working out. And, I think Sid has also tweeted some interesting parts on that. I don't know, Sid, do you want to add on to that question, or is it just my question?
Sure. No, I think that's a good question. I think right now, we're basically seeing this effect of, everybody sort of overwhelmingly voted right. We saw that the popular vote also went to Donald Trump in 2024. And because of that, he sort of, the Republican Party sort of got this absolute power, and the Democratic Party sort of lost its character. It's lost its character. It's lost what it really stands for. They don't really have a direction. They didn't. I wouldn't say they don't, because right now they're again back in the fray. But because of that, we saw a lot of, hardliners in the Republican Party sort of taking very aggressive stances. And, they've made a political miscalculation because they took the American electorate for granted. And by doing that, they've pushed the country so far away against Trump and JD Vance that everybody simply just wants to go back to the center. And that's why midterms is now a guarantee for Democrats. Democrats are going to win. And that's because, the American population, of course, they do support deportations. They do support illegal immigration to be stopped. They want to also sort of stop legal immigration to an extent where it doesn't affect the economy. But it's gone too far. It's gone to an extent where Americans are tired of this level of tyranny. I would use that word because I know it's a strong word, but I would still use it because that's what's going on right now. ICE has sort of become this rogue militia that's going and terrorizing people. They've killed American citizens, and immediately you see Republican officials come out and act like PR wing for these ICE officials and defend them. And this has led to serious problems for the Republican Party, and the American population simply just wants to go back to the center. So yeah, that's precisely what's going on right now in the US.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Seth. So, Navroji, over to you. Your take on where does the American political, so-called the historical democracy and where it is today, 2026. Is it really a democracy? Where is it?
It is a democracy on its last legs, if you ask me. And why I say so, I would go to, I see two or three big problems, with the United States. One, the US is not a civilizational state like India, China, ancient Rome, Egypt, or even the Russians. It has no identity except for freedom and all that kind what was given to it by its founding fathers 250 years back. Now, when you don't have any a religious or a civilizational identity binding you, what unites you? What unites you behind the flag or the nation? The industrialization, prosperity, growth, power, power in the sense military, power in the sense financial. And when the military power of US, I'm not even denying it's still the largest and the big strongest military in the world. But the financial power is going down. The middle class hollowed out. Whom do they blame for it? Asians? No, Indians specifically. They are the ones who are stealing our jobs. They don't realize their jobs were shipped out by their own Wall Street for their corporate profit. They were not the Indians. Indians were the skilled one who came, who were on a civil contract which you made through the H-1B visa program, which your government agreed to at that time, and you wanted to get the best talent from across the world and roll out. But now you say these people are stealing your jobs. No, they are not. The Rust Belt was not empty due to this. The Rust Belt was emptied because your elite sold even the low-cost manufacturing things, even semiconductor chips to Taiwan, steel, aluminum to other countries across the world, and even toys, even something like toys were also built from Japan, were coming from China. Even Trump MAGA hats are made in China. That is a kind of ruin which America brought in itself. Whom you can blame? Okay, so when you have an economy in turmoil, you impose tariffs. And research after research says all these tariffs are going to be ultimately borne by the US consumer, and we have the Supreme Court decision pending, which is delaying week after week after week, because I would not even call it the US Supreme Court, I would call it the USA Executive Court, because it is packed by the Republican majority. And they are and they are fearful of ruling against the president's signature the decision. I will be surprised if they rule against him, but I am not betting too much, despite the market projections saying otherwise. Okay. Having said that, so what will this lead to? So once you have a backdoor inflation. Okay, then people say, okay, but where is the inflation? Inflation is not rising. Inflation is not rising. Obviously, you have reduced tariffs on China from 100% to 30%. Effective rate is 17 to 18%. You have walked back half your tariffs. Where will be the inflation? You have tackled out. Then, because there is a mass unemployment, unemployment numbers at an all-time high. The labor market, which is why that is the only condition which the Fed is taking into consideration by cutting the rates. What will that lead to? That leads to mass anger in the people. हमको jobs नहीं मिल रही हैं, jobs नहीं मिल रही हैं, निकालो निकालो निकालो, बाहर फेंको. No, just not illegal immigration, even legal migrants को भेजो, green card वालों को target करो, H1B वालों को target करो, as if the whole world is a problem and the American elite is the like तुम्हारा सती सावित्री वाला हाल है बच्चों इनका. उन्होंने कुछ किया ही नहीं है, right? They will blame the whole world for their own mess, which their own elite created. Which is why they will feed this xenophobia into their masses. You Pajit, you Indians, you do this, you do that, targeting on racial lines. And then you will targeting them on economic lines, H1B se leke green card. Then there is ICE. Siddharth said, I will go a bit further. ICE is the Nazi Gestapo version of America. It's even worse. The videos which you are seeing from Minneapolis, which are coming from Minnesota, are even worse. Where a bystander who is a nurse is shooting the video, they push him down and they fire 6 bullets into him, and he's a US citizen. This. And then they detain people, refugees who are working on cards, they are putting in detention centers. They have killed many in detention centers. It is virtually, this is kind of an action, civil liberties have been thrown to winds in the constitutional America, which prided on its constitution, which prided on its human rights. And then you have Stephen Miller. I would call it Miller-Trump administration, not even Trump-Miller administration, because Miller is the one who's driving these policies from the White House, putting all these things into, all these racial lines, remove this. And then you do have Bannon as the, having that megaphone on the radio with Bannon and announcing. And then you have Nick Fuentes who goes on to go lecture, why do we want to have the Israeli lobby? Why do we want to have the regime change war? We do not want the immigration. So these are symptoms of an institutional, a societal collapse. And unfortunately, there is no binding factor in United States. They are done with the liberal Democrat. Unfortunately, Democrats ke paas Mamdani as an answer hai, and he gives them no solution to it. The problem of America. The problem of America is the economy, the over financialization, the broken economy, the broken trust between the Wall Street and Washington establishment and the Main Street. इसको address करने के लिए किसी के पास कोई agenda नहीं है. You have cut down the healthcare like crazy, which Trump has cut down. All conditions are in place for Trump to lose the midterms. Now the problem सबसे बड़ी ये आ जाती है, can the Democrats use this opportunity and or as a default can they win? Because if they do, as Senator Ted Cruz की जो leaked audio में आती है, Trump is all set to be impeached once again. And this societal xenophobia and these arguments will even multiply, because when you as the White House do not have an answer to America's problem, people's problem, American people's problem, their basic stuff, then the only option is you feed the rape, you feed religion, you either dope them through religion or you feed xenophobia in their mind and keep them divided. That is the only way you can keep your base together going into midterms. I foresee more polarization on immigration, more ICE raids, more drama, because Miller is not going to back down in the White House. And then more xenophobia on Indians and more targeting of the political opposition, so much so that they will even use Department of Justice to weaponize and go against their rivals and go after them one after another. So be it the Clinton, be it the Obamas, be it their administration, they will go after everyone. This is not the America what we knew, which used to operate through certain democratic norms. These people preach democracy to the whole world, and look, today they are marching towards like a tin pot dictatorship, where Trump wants to model himself like a Vladimir Putin or a Xi Jinping, and wants to have some kind of a march, or on 4th of July, some kind of a march of army parading. The US political system is totally broken. This two-party system is defunct. It's serving no one except for the corporate elite. They keep on continuing fooling the people, left or right, both. And ultimately, something will have to give. And I fear that this will ultimately end up pitting one American section against another American section on basis on color, basis on sex, basis on gender, and you will see virtually America descend slowly towards anarchy or a form of a civil war. If these guys do not take control and get a better hand of it, because it does not have an identity or a civilizational bondage like other states have to rally around. You cannot buy out the jihadist or the Islamist in the Middle East. They have a cause to rally around. You cannot ask the Indians to because some sort of a Sanatan Dharma or a Hindu value system rallies the whole country around it, which is why you see those election mandates coming majority. You cannot say the same about China, for they want to avenge their Han civilization primacy of the Ming dynasty or the Qing dynasty. They want to retain that. The Russians want to regain their imperial glory. Even to a certain extent, the the ancient Rome wants to rekindle. The British want to rekindle the aristocracy. They are rootless empire, have nothing left in them. But many, but powers in the East and the Islamic world still have some ideology, some cause to rally behind. The Americans have none, except power and except money and a military. Best of luck to them. That's my take.
Thank you very much. I think very intense, and I think we have some more people. I think Sam Park. I don't know is that your real name?
N- no, it's not my real name. Anyway, thank you very much for giving me opportunity. I just have a quick question. Where do you see uh, Navroopji, America also disintegrating into other parts, several parts in future?
Okay, can we take Navruji? Can we take one or two more questions? I think
Yes,
Sagat,
please go
Sagat
ahead.
had a question. Sagat.
Yeah. Navruji, thank you so much. It's been really helpful. So two quick questions. One specifically, the new international world order, what role does China play in that? That's the first question. The second is, what would be India's journey, considering we are still at a growing phase of our economy at this point of time? What are the priorities or probably the challenges that would be in the current new world order?
Okay, can I say before Navruji take your question, folks, can you please repost the pinned, some of these positions. Go to Navroopji's pinned tweet, repost that. And I really encourage all of you to follow the speakers and the co-hosts. That'll be great because we really need to come together. And I see still the space is only retweeted like 10 times. There are more than 350 people here. Guys, we can do better. We are Desis across the world right now with Navroopji. So let's make it happen. Over to you, sir.
Okay, interesting. So first, Sampark asked whether we can see US disintegrate. Well, I don't think so. It's going to happen soon because US has certain conditions which will continue to make it a elongated empire. it has the technology, it has the industrial might, it has the financial magnates. So even if the dollar system breaks, which may happen, the treasury market breaks, which may happen, but the dollar will still continue to remain as one of the major currencies in the world. जिसमें trade चलेगा. That does not mean that dollar के alternatives नहीं आएंगे. So what we are not actually looking at the de-dollarization, rather what we are looking at is alternatives to dollar propping up. And this brings me to the question which Sagat Bhai said. Okay? That how do you see India and China performing in these, you see international rules-based order breaking down, the new order. So first we need to understand what is the new order. First, we all know that the old order is breaking down. We've discussed ad nauseum on it. The new order is not going to be one power dictating. It is not going to be a Pax Sinica which is going to dictate the world. No. It is going to be majorly two poles, two supply chains, plus middle power. And I believe a lot of countries, even in the BRICS Plus alliance, do not want to, accept the Chinese hegemony as such. Because after China has weaponized rare earths against Japan, many countries, including India, do not want to be blackmailed by China. और हमारा एक टेरिटोरियल मतलब इश्यूज भी बाउंड्री का जो चल रहा है एक्साई चीन का एंड लद्दाख में जो हमारे आपस में टॉक्स चल रही हैं दो इट हैज बीन डिफ्यूज टू अ सर्टेन एक्सटेंट डीएस्केलेट हुआ है लेकिन अभी भी खत्म नहीं हुआ है तो हैविंग सेड दैट तो ये जो सारा जो हमारा चल रहा है तो कंट्री विल नॉट एक्सेप्ट द चाइनीज हेजेमनी एज वेल it's still not ready. It's still not reached that critical mass. Though they are very good in AI, green, renewable energy, they have done fabulous strides over there, high-speed railway and all that stuff. But they're still not comparatively, financially, they're still not very close to the American empire. So this brings us, so what is going to happen is, there are going to be multiple currency trading blocks. Primarily two, one led by the dollar and the stable coins, and the other led by the Chinese. But there's going to be China plus, I would say, which will have the BRICS countries trading in their respective currencies. And some of it could be backed by a basket of gold, of commodities, which include gold, silver, and probably proportion of the currencies of the respective member states. Which is why gold is making a comeback, of a epic comeback which has not been seen, in the monetary system. Now, gold is rallying because the investors are losing trust in US dollar treasury, which is where you want to go. And then you have the central banks accumulating gold like crazy. Nearly 1,000 tons plus have been added by both China and Russia over last 1 to 1.5 years. India's gold reserves have gone up by 500 to 700, from 500 tons to almost 880 tons. We dumped 50 billion of treasuries and we have added more gold. At the same time, India's silver demand just broke the LBMA, which is the London Bullion Exchange. And then you have the Chinese setting up Shanghai Gold Exchange, and the Chinese are even offering the offshore gold vaults in Dubai and in other jurisdictions. कि अगर आप मेरे यहाँ ट्रस्ट नहीं करते हो तो आप ये गोल्ड जो है आप दुबई के वॉल्ट में रखवा दो कहीं और रखवा दो शंघाई गोल्ड एक्सचेंज के. And then the Chinese decided that from the 1st of January 2026, China is going to stop the export of silver. And then you had Russia saying that they are not going to export any more gold. And you had India, which imported 60,000 crores worth gold and silver, which is one of the reasons why rupee is going down despite dollar weakness across the world, because आपका gold और silver imports बंद ही नहीं हो रहे हैं. यहाँ तक कि चाइना से एक सिल्वर का शिप जो लंदन जाना था वो डायरेक्टली इंडिया डाइवर्ट कर दिया गया सिल्वर का 2,500. I don't know how much million ounces of silver it was carrying. So you had इंडिया इम्पोर्टिंग इंडिया का जो ETF का जो आपकी सिल्वर और गोल्ड की जो ETF है उनका AUM 50,000 करोड़ से 1 लाख करोड़ के आसपास पहुंच चुका है डबल हो चुका है. That is the amount of silver. You broke the silver market. The Chinese stopped the supply further, and which is why you had the parabolic moves in silver and gold. And because silver is also an industrial metal, you had the Samsung people running to mines in Mexico saying, "Mujhe silver chahiye iske liye." Then you had the memory and the hard disk shortage for computing. So अब ये सब चीजें अगर मैं 1+1+1+1 देखूं, so you had the central banks, you had the big players moving for the precious metals, specifically gold and silver, and in between, India made two decisions. One, the RBI said that silver can be used as collateral for providing loans, which means silver is back in the monetary. Now, if I have silver at home and I can get loans for the silver, silver is back as part of the monetary tool, monetary policy के मतलब monetary lending में आ गया दोबारा system में. Then you had the regulator in India allow the government pension funds worth 34 lakh crores to allow 5% of the total AUM, total value of them, to be invested in gold and silver ETFs, which means more demand for gold and silver. So that meant another bullish contrapoint for gold and silver. So now you see dollar is going to get debased and further eroded and debased as we go ahead because US is reindustrializing and reshoring. Yuan is not yet ready. Countries are not willing to accept. However, there are countries of global south like BRICS plus is what India is proposing that we can interlink digital currency. The payment settlement system of BRICPay is ready to bypass the dollar. And then you have Shanghai offering offshore gold vault to them. So this is a period of transition where you will have multiple currencies, multiple trading blocks, with primarily two supply chains. Middle powers jostling for and trying to trade with both sides. And you will have the gold and silver making a comeback as the ultimate neutral reserve currency, which cannot be sanctioned by any power or printed like dollar, your worthless dollar. So this is going to be the law, or this is going to be the time, likely to be the season or the flavor over next 5, 7, 8, 10 years, till we arrive at a global consensus what is going to be the new order is going to look like. I believe in the new order, digital currency, CBDCs are going to play a big impact. Probably backed by gold, probably backed by other things. The Americans still have some cards to play. I will not rule that out. Those cards could be played in form of gold revaluation, where will again substantially devalue dollar. And the US Treasury General Account will get a windfall of $2 trillion if they revalue gold to the market value. Right? They are still stuck at $34. Today we are at $5,000. Imagine the kind of windfall the US Treasury will get. And Trump can get extra money to rebuild America. So that is one aspect of it. Other aspect which we've also talked about, Stephen Miran's restructuring trade in November 2024, who is the White House economic advisor and also now on the board of the Federal Reserve. That man has said in his paper that the US could issue in its 255th independence year, which is 2026, a gold-backed 50-year non-tradable bond, which will be offered to its ally, the closest allies, who can be partially backed by gold, which means that 50 साल के लिए which उसको आप trade नहीं कर सकते, you invest in the US Treasury and America will promise you to pay back the amount back in gold after 50 years. So this is the likely chance, but in every case, if they have to inflate its way out of debt, the dollar devalues. You revalue the gold, dollar devalues. You reshore, rebuild, the dollar debasement rate continues. Either way, there is no choice left. This trade has to go ahead, and which is why you see those breakouts, which is why, Swagat bhai, India and China are going to play a very, very, very critical role because we are part of the RIC. And last and the final point, I'll conclude on this part of it. Ultimately, Trump is seeking a Yalta 2.0 movement, a negotiated agreement with Russia, on Ukraine, a negotiated agreement with China on currency and trade, a negotiated agreement with ultimately with India on trade because it is one of the largest economies in the world, and without it, no consumer demand can sustain because China में consumer demand है नहीं. It is an exporting country. So if there is any big market outside China in Asia which can sustain the American consumer, American corporates, American big tech, it is India. So these four countries, which is why आप national security strategy का एक leak आया था, which talked about the core 5 grouping. Those core 5 grouping which Trump was contemplating had America, Russia, China, India, Japan. Now, Japan is essential because Japan में yen carry trade and Japan has sustained those capital surpluses जिसकी वजह से US Treasury system चलता है. That is another different story which is unfolding
Exactly.
on the other side of the Pacific. So I'll come to that later, आराम से.
Yeah, I think, thank you. Very, 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 very intense and amazing. Rohit, you're here right from DC. And, nothing like getting some inputs from you. Rajiv will just come to you. I know that Rohit will be brought into some television or doing some interviews. Rohit, if you could really tell us, I know that it's maybe because I don't want to put you in a spot because you need to manage your existence. But if you could really talk about, where are we like more general, because you've seen the entire you've been there for so many years, you've covered and wore different hats as a journalist. So where do you really see, where are we today between US and India, and really US, where is US standing really today?
Thank you, Ravi bhai. Thank you so much for having me. I think, I would just caution not to join too many dots. I think there are too many dots out there, right? And I think, and I'm going to say this, and it probably would upset people, but I'll still say it. I think sometimes we give too much credit to the American system in the sense that everything is planned and there's a reason for this happening and a reason for that happening, especially since the last year. I think one thing we've all realized, and there is evidence to back that sometimes actions are taken and then they realize, oh, this is not where we wanted to go, and they roll back those actions, right? And I think in terms of India also, I think it's a little complicated with the fact that, yes, there should have been a thank you is what people expect in the White House, that India should have thanked for the ceasefire, right? Even if the Pakistani DGMO called Indian DGMO, there are people who firmly believe that it was the Americans who asked the Pakistanis to call the Indian side to stop that war. So, that's one. Then what has been in the public domain for a long time, that yes, India kind of wanted its own time, and the White House was in an absolute rush to announce a trade deal. So there has been some frustration without understanding India's perspective, especially in the close circles of the president, that India has been, working slow to get this deal done, frustrating him at times. And then we've also seen that there is, at least from what I know, and I know it from a very good source, that, whenever we see President Trump talk about Prime Minister Modi, he actually believes that Prime Minister Modi is a great friend. And I think that's another reason why people are still very hopeful that things will fall in place. It could be now, it could be 3 months from now. But the other fact is, and I think it bodes well for both sides now. I think if I have to say this now, that I don't think India features in the plans. I think the president and they've moved on from India in some way, shape or form for that trade deal, which I think President wanted as a quick win last year. I don't think they really want it now. I think it's just one of those things that's working in the background. And as we've seen with Ambassador Gore traveling to India, we've had at least one senator. We've got 2 delegations of congressmen. There's one going next week. There's the AI summit. You will see about 130 American CEOs and administration officials all traveling to India for the AI summit in February. So I think, I think they're working in a way that they're trying to silo the trade deal and be like, all right, we'll talk about that, but let's continue with the relationship as we think it's very important and necessary. The other thing is the realization is, exists on the Capitol Hill, which is India is a dear friend, and we should take care of about the relationship that we have with India. Yes, it hasn't been great in the last 1 year, but I think there are very hopeful people that it will go back to it. The other thing that really has not helped, and this is from what I've heard from the American side, is the Prime Minister has not really traveled abroad and there have been opportunities where he could have actually gone and met the president, and that hasn't happened. That could also have changed things a bit. And then what has happened due to that is there's been a vacuum. We've seen the Pakistani Prime Minister meet the President Trump at least 3 times, if I'm not mistaken, in different settings, twice at the White House, once recently. Actually 4 times now I think about it. So I think, so that also creates a lot of this narrative among, I think, people in India about, Pakistan is gaining momentum, blah, 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 this, that. Look, Pakistan was never out of favor, to be frankly honest with you. I think they've always kept Pakistan as somebody they would want to for a lot of reasons. But India was definitely getting a lot of special treatment in the last 8-10 years, and we're not getting it. So it's natural to feel a little upset and disappointed. But I'm very hopeful about the relationship. I think once we get things done, and you will see that, I think you will see great interviews in the last 3 weeks. Next 3 weeks, you will be surprised, especially with the AI Summit and the kind of people that are traveling to India. It'll be amazing. I think Indian media would be flooded with interviews and positive talk about India and the US. I know Foreign Minister Jaishankar is going to be in the US first week of February. So I think the relationship will take care of itself. We just have to be patient. And I think as far as President Trump is concerned, look, he's somebody, and we've seen this multiple times. He's somebody who is very, very opinionated, but at the same time, if people speak facts with him, and once he sits down and realizes that we've got to change course, like he did this morning when he spoke to Governor Walz. By the way, he did not have great things to talk about Governor Walz up until yesterday. But this morning he talked to Governor Walz in Minnesota and said, look, we're on the same wavelength, and, we respect each other and we'll get things done. So that's President Trump. It's only a matter of time, I think, when things will get resolved. And as I said, beginning of my comments, I think we should be cautious about joining too many dots. I think we should let it play. I think there are enough people in Washington, D.C. that value India's relationship with the U.S. and understand the challenges that we all face and will face in the future. It is just that we haven't had great year, and that should not idly define what it could be. I think I'm very hopeful about things will be back on track this year. Thank you.
Great. Let me take, I don't know if any of my co-hosts have questions, but I think Rajiv and Ruchi, and then I have 2 questions, Navroopji, before we come to you. Rajiv, you had a question, right? I don't know, probably he's not there, Ruchi. If you can ask a question.
Yes, thank you for having me as a speaker, and good morning, good evening. I'm from Canada, and we are also watching what is happening in the US. And while we understand that American president has to be America first, but we do see it as a concern because it's becoming unpredictable, and we are seeing a lot of pressure tactics. So my question is, like, how do you see America Canada relationship, and even Canada India relationship in this
Thank
whole.
thank you, Ruchi. I'll just take one more question from Rajiv. I don't know, Rajiv, are you there?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Anji, Anji.
So my question was to Navroop. Essentially, I was asking that, do you see all these developments set in stone, or 3 years down the line when Trump goes out, you see some reversal of whatever has happened in the last 1 year happening both geopolitically and in the India-US relationships?
Thank you, Rajiv. Navroopji, you have 2 questions, and I'm going to shoot 2 questions too, but I just want to request, Ramji, if you want to please come up, and Purnimaji, if you can please also come up, it'll be great. I have 2 questions because, we are at this point about, the EU, and, you've seen the euphoria And of course, Rohit, you had some fantastic points, but I'm just wondering, is it 20 years from now? Because, the EU took 20 years to finally reach an FTA, which EU needs more than India does. I mean, that's a big statement. We'll probably talk about it tomorrow. And second, the question is BRICS, right? India is the president of BRICS. How does that BRICS presidency go beyond, just convening? Like, I don't think it should be like marathon convening of 50 events, meaningless. I think this is a very interesting opportunity, right? So if you could take up those four questions. And Ram, welcome. Finally, we're in a space together. A big warm welcome to you. And Purnimaji, if you can also please come, it'll be great. And people who have taken your questions, if you can step down, then we'll come to Ravi. Navroopji.
Okay. So first I'll take Ruchi's question, which is easier one, which is the, India, Canada and Canada. See, Trump is going for America first. He's implemented the Monroe Doctrine. He says Western Hemisphere for me. He wants Venezuela, all the countries from South, Latin America, Middle, Central America, across all the way to North America, Canada, to fall in line with the one American policy. He wants to, like America, Canada is critical. Though Prime Minister Carney has not, really stinged him badly at the World Economic Forum by giving that brilliant speech, which in my opinion, because he really summed it up and gave investors, the bird's eye view of what is happening in the world and how this world order is collapsing. That's Americana one. However, Prime Minister Carney, to all, I must say that the man has, literally has good instincts because he has been able to, unlike Trudeau, he has been able to get the Indian relationship back on track. I've just read in the news today on my timeline that Mr. Ajit Doval, the NSC of India, is traveling to Canada in February, followed by most likely a visit of Prime Minister Carney in March, which would likely lead to a conclusion of a nuclear fuel deal between India and Canada, and also the security threat and the angle of those the separatists which are housed in Canada will also be talked about. And Canada is also looking for a trade agreement with India. Canada is also looking for a trade agreement with European Union. Trying to integrate itself more with the European Union. It is Carney just visited China and gave them that one time relief of the Chinese EVs and all that stuff. So Canada so far I think is now going in a very sensible direction, but the only problem what I feel for Canada is going to come is when the USMCA comes up for renegotiation in the middle of this year. How will America deal with it? Will America allow those tariffs to be reimposed and take the tariffs higher against Carney and the Canadians to that extent? My reading of people I know in Canada, my personal relatives who stay in Canada, far away friends and who put up in Canada, they say that there's a lot of Canadian nationalism and there's a lot of anti-US, and even the traffic and the tourism across the borders have declined to a great extent. So much so that even companies like JP Morgan in Canada do not want to hire workers from JP Morgan in America. They do not want the cross-border trade to that kind of extent. Canada for Canadians, right? So that is the kind of sentiment which is going, like it's America for Americans. The same sentiment is also going over there. So this is going to be a very critical thing to watch out, because I think that the cookie will really crumble or turn on what happens in the USMCA negotiation, which comes up in the middle of this year, June, July. As Lutnick want, I will use that as a leverage against Carney. Now,
Navroop ji, there is
yeah.
a nuisance here because Carney is not a majority government. It is still a minority government, and they are a couple of seats short of a majority.
Which is why I said, now, the Americans can play at multiple levers. So we will need to see when the thing comes up for renegotiation, what pressures do the American apply, what leverage do set up ultimately, because they are masters of exploiting these things. So this is a little bit about Canada. Canada-India relationship is going to come back on track under Carney if he stays. Hopefully he stays, right? And by March we should have a good agreements in place. Then Rajiv ji had asked me about what exactly, Rajiv ji? Any idea what आपने क्या बोला था?
What I was saying was that does all these developments, are they permanent in nature? What Trump
Yeah,
is initiating,
correct.
or will they change when he goes out?
Okay. Now, my answer, my thing, you have to understand, yeah, well, not you, Matamid Rajiv, but generally the listeners, जो यहाँ पे हैं, the American relationship with India was based on few factors. Since 1991, what they wanted India as a service backend and a frontline ally. A couple of objectives was the strategic partnership which was offered to us, which was institutionalized under DTTI under President Obama, majoritarily in 2015 under this government, because AK Antony was not and the UPA were not that favorable to do it. The breakthrough was led by the Vajpayee government after nuclear test. When Clinton visited India and removed those sanctions and all that thing, we were declared as the natural partners and allies. Then the Bush administration carried on in 2008 with the nuclear deal. Unfortunately, 7 Nuclear Liabilities Act was passed, जिसकी वजह से कभी वो operationalize नहीं हो पाई deal, and which is also why the UPA lost power. Okay? Because it acted against certain American interests. Now, coming to this government, the Modi government, they in 2015 institutionalized a defense partnership with the DTTI and then foundational pacts of Limua, Comcasa and all these were signed. So we had a bipartisan consensus in America that India-US is a strategic partnership, Quad, etc., etc., etc. अब इस सब का जो इनके जो पिलर्स थे इस फाउंडेशनल स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप के जो अमेरिका के स्ट्रेटेजिक व्यू पॉइंट से देखे जाएं तो वो था नंबर 1 that they will try to wean away India from Russian energy and arms. This was a consensus, bipartisan consensus. Number 2, they will try to integrate India's defense and the defense supply lines into defense and space supply lines into American defense and space supply lines, supply chains. Number 3, that India would act as a service backend for the world for its American IT company, but never engage in the product or hardware management. It was the Information Technology Agreement signed in 1997 in the Devi Gowda government, which is why, or Indra Kumar Gupta government, I really don't know, I've read it about it, which led to the rise of Infosys and the TCS and the BPO model, जिसकी वजह से आपके एक मिडिल क्लास और AI boom आया इंडिया में. I mean IT sector का boom आया. And then you had the Trump adding 2 more calories to it, that India should, stop out the, put a full stop to de-dollarization moves at the BRICS or any non-dollar payment settlement systems, which are going to, and plus, you are not going to, integrate yourself with other blocks and, moving out SCO breaks, these सब चीजें नहीं है. You simply move to the American camp like what Japan and what South Korea are saying. And the final part, you remove the non-trade barriers and you also, what you say, आपका जो एग्रीकल्चर और सारे जो आपने जो 1991 रिफॉर्म में जो आपने कॉर्पोरेटाइजेशन डिसमैंटलिंग द पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सर्विस removing the MSP, removing the subsidy, the fertilizer subsidy, not realizing that these very Americans give $30,000 a subsidy to each American farmer, and they bulk at India providing $3,000 of subsidy to Indian farmers. That is the kind of disparity they do. इस सब के बावजूद वो रिफॉर्म्स चाहते हैं. So this government, they tried their best over the years, over the last 5-10 years, to push India, to nudge India towards American sphere of influence through those foundational agreements, through those defense deals, through those energy deals, through those oil deals. But when they realize that they have not been able to move the needle substantially, they went for the nuclear option. The nuclear option is that we put tariffs and we force you to change your stand. You remember Howard Lutnick in March 2023 and at the India Today, March 2025, at the India Today conference, he said, "Oh, our arms are so better. Why do you want the Russian arms?" Well, Operation Sindoor answered it, Mr. Latnik. Why do we need the Russian arms? S-400 performed much better. Having said that, why do you need Russian energy? We have so much of energy. We are the largest producers of oil. So when neither are you willing to fully transgress yourself, submit to the American orbit in defense and energy and move away from Russia, nor are you willing to leave BRICS or other groups and stop the de-dollarization payments or non-dollar payment settlement system, nor are you willing to be the American foot soldiers in containment of China in Indo-Pacific measures, and you are dealing with you're taking Moscow's help to diffuse your issues with China on the border. These are running, and then you also say, I am not going to give you agriculture, I am not going to give you dairy, I am not going to lift my non-trade barriers. Then the American says, we have had enough of it. You have to read Robert Isaiah. It's not me. These are Trump's own dictums. Trump ideology, which has originated from Project 2025, Robert Lighthizer, Stephen Miran, Stephen Miller. Please read them. These are not connecting the dots. These are policy guidelines which Robert Lighthizer has talked about. Which is why you see this is a fundamental rupture which has happened between India and United States, because you were unwilling to comply with those conditions which the US was wanting to make you pivot towards it. But ultimately, you were always saying, my strategic autonomy, my strategic autonomy. He said, what is the strategic autonomy? This is not, this thing, we have had enough of your, playing dilly-dally, the middle power, swing this way, swing that way. You decide, you are with us or against us. Like what they told to, by Richard Armitage told to General Musharraf after 9/11. Which is why there was a story reported that, they said, okay, you want F-35. We said, okay, what about the source code and integration? They said, we can't provide that. I said, sorry, we are not going to take that. And that is when the cookie broke in November. We were very close to a deal in November as well, last year. But it was almost to be announced after Diwali. But F-35 broke it. Because we cannot, because our F-35, your F-35 will not integrate with the S-400s. What do we do with that? And once you tie up to the American system, then slowly they will say, अच्छा अब S-400 भी निकालो, वो भी नहीं चलेगा, मेरे से Patriot लो, मेरे से Thad लो. So you have all these problems which will come up. So इसीलिए ये सारे trade हो गया, de-dollarization and trading blocks हो गए, containment of China, Russian energy and arms, and then you had, the trade barriers. These are 4 to 5 pillars जिसके बेस पे आपकी strategic partnership चलती थी. और ये सारे पिलर्स आज डिसफंक्शनल है. एक स्ट्रक्चरल ब्रेक है ये. अगर ट्रम्प चला भी जाता है and some other power comes, these pillars were agreed to in 1991. They were agreed to or implemented through Clinton administration. What were they doing? If you read the the NSSM 200 developed by Henry Kissinger in 1971, which talks about that our goal is to make sure to influence the policies of the third world countries so that they act in consonance with American foreign policy and strategic objective, which is to secure resources for America. And that is exactly what is happening today. This is not me, this is Henry Kissinger. तो आप लोगों को ये समझना पड़ेगा कि ये एक बहुत डिफरेंट एरा में हम जी रहे हैं. वो साडी तो आडी स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप वाली जो एक पार्टनरशिप चलती थी, वो पार्टनरशिप खत्म है. आपके H1B प्रोग्राम के लिए आज स्लॉट्स में 2027 में डाल दिए गए. द होल थिंग हैज बीन वर्चुअली डंप्ड इनटू द डीप इनटू द पैसिफिक ओशन. And the kind of damage which is being done to the Indian diaspora, the Indian IT services or Indian other thing is beyond. Pakistan के साथ वो नहीं किया जा रहा है. So let's understand, because आप अपनी strategic autonomy कर रहे हो, आप अपने आप को give up नहीं करना चाहते, आप अपने you don't want to, because America is an unreliable. Saudi Arabia oil बेच रहा है युआन में, वो hedge कर रहा है US को, वो इजराइल के इंटरेस्ट को सीरिया के कर्ज में हर्ट कर रहे हैं, वो यूरोप को ग्रीनलैंड में मार वो नेटो छोड़ने को, वो यूएस के यूरोपियन बेसिस खाली करने को तैयार है अगर उनको ग्रीनलैंड मिल जाए तो. You want to get into bed with this kind of an unreliable America. And which is why I think the government of India is doing a fabulous job of clinching these trade deals with Europe, with New Zealand, with Australia. You have to diversify and hedge. The Europeans understand it, the Indians understand it. Everyone has to do this now. Because it is an unreliable, it is a rogue power which has gone unreliable because they are desperate to maintain the, reshore, reindustrialize and protect whatever they have. Trump wants to take America back to 1920s, 1930s. वो क्या कहते हैं 40 के बाले वाला वर्ड ऑर्डर हमें चाहिए ही नहीं है. मिलर ते मिरान सारा बोल रहे हैं भाई, मैं नहीं बोल रहा ये. We have destroyed. हमें क्या मिला है? मार्को रूबियो की टेस्टिमनी है सेनेट के आगे that the world order has not served us. What? All the American tech giant Magnificent Seven कैसे बने हैं ये? The world order served you, you fools. It was you who took those corporate profits and hollowed out the American industrial base. It's your own problem. The Indians did not do it did not steal anything out of that. The Chinese did steal. And what did you do with them? You kept a blind eye. So the problem lies in the American system itself. It is broken, debt, deficit, emboldened to a moth-eaten currency which is debasing and devaluing itself. And then they blame others around the world and say कि आप नहीं कर रहे, आप नहीं कर रहे, आप नहीं कर रहे, मैं ये लूंगा, मैं वो लूंगा, like a bully throwing around your weight. And Mr. Donald Trump, I'm going to tell you, you wanted to isolate India today, but our government is doing a fantastic job from domestic deregulation and reforms and Make in India and PLI schemes and smart manufacturing and so many other things, tax liberalization, what they have done to boost the domestic consumer demand during monetary policy. But you wanted to isolate India, and we have more powers are coming to India from France to Germany to European Union to Canada and to even Russia has signed Relos Pact. Russia has given Arctic access to India. India has given the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf, which is virtually breaking out, destroying the whole proper, the theory of Anglo-American empire कि किसी भी communist power को Russia, China को warm ports पे आने नहीं देना. Today these Russian submarines or warships can actually dock on the Indian shores, and no one can stop it.
It's
Which
a
is
very interesting post from
which
The
is
Economist right now.
yep,
Sorry.
which
No, I
is
was saying on this point that The
uh,
Economist just tweeted something that Donald Trump should be given this credit for bringing EU and India finally together in 20 years.
exactly. Donald Trump has done so many things. He has made sure, ग्रीनलैंड पे वो रशियन टैंकर को जब्त कर रहे थे पायरेट्स की तरह. वो पायरेसी क्यों हो रही थी कि ये मेरा ओशन है, हम नहीं नीचे आने देंगे. Well, the Russians will dock at the Indian ports and you cannot stop that. कैसी रही?
Navrubji, what do you think about this India getting invitation for the Trump's Board of Peace in Gaza?
I think
What's
India
your
said
thought
no.
about it?
India's already said no, right?
No, we haven't said no,
So
but
because
it
of
is.
Pakistan, they will say no. Yeah, I hope so.
No, I don't know whether they'll say a no because it is a private board. Through the European powers are not part of it. All P5 powers are not part of it except America. So it makes no sense to actually attend it now. Just keep silent. Don't say a yes or a no because no बोलोगे तो कहेगा ये ले 25% tariff और लगाता हूँ. ठीक है? He's that kind of a eccentric man.
नहीं वो Elon Musk ने नहीं बोला था piece of this and piece of that. वो भी पागल है. But anyways, I just wanted to say, just welcome Ram and also welcome Purnima ji. Great to have you and just wanted to hear your thoughts. Purnima ji, we have many men speaking, so maybe you want to say a few words and your reflections on Ram. And if you have any questions for Navrup, just do follow all the speakers. And Ram, you have some fantastic things that you share. If you could just take us through some of the data points, that'll be great. And, Purnima ji, if you could talk from a political perspective. I know that many of us are still wondering what's happening, but and then Navroopji, if you can react to that, would be great. Ram or Yeah, please, Purnamaji.
Thank you so much for having me, Raviji. Nice to see such a wonderful conversation. Navroopji, totally on point. I don't know if you asked for specifically Iran, but I've been speaking about this hypocrisy of American hegemony and imperialism. It's sticking to our bones at this point of time. As an Indian-born American citizen, it's I have been speaking out on this colonial propaganda and agenda, the resource extraction, the control of supply chain, the global shipping routes. It's just on and on and on. And then I think the reason the Trump is certainly trying to do what he's doing, um, he hasn't created the system. He's literally just caught on to the situation and trying unapologetically. He's being the next dictator. It's beyond the Hitlerian situation or the Stalinian situation or the Mussolini. And then I think I'm beyond appalled at this point of time and how we as a country have come to this situation. There's no mask at this point of time. It fell. It's not about just India, Canada, Venezuela, Iran, Colombia, Chile. It doesn't matter what it is. America is exposed right now. It's standing naked, and everybody is able to see. And if you are unable to see at this point of time, I don't know what else we can show you. But I think as an Indian American, as a Hindu specifically, I think we have bigger responsibility on our shoulder today to show what it has done in the past, not just from an American standpoint, but from a colonial standpoint, from a European colonial standpoint, the racial segregation that we have seen, and it's not isolated at all. I think Hindus as a civilizational ethos and the last surviving heritage in the world today, nothing survived. We survived somehow. I'm surprised how we survived. We're so meek, weak. We don't fight back. We don't confront. We hate confronting each other. We want the nice certificate from the Westerners. The white guys have to like us. And a good Hindu is a mum Hindu. Good Hindu is a dead Hindu. We convert without any restraint. And to me, I think the whole aspect today has made me even more vocal at this point of time. I think Hindus in India are the only ones who can actually save this situation. And I'm not afraid as an Indian American speaking out of this about this hypocrisy anymore. Whether it's a Democrat or Republican really doesn't matter. They actually played the same game. The tactics were different. The overtism or the covertism, it really didn't matter at the end of the day. If you remember recently the 500% tariff thing, it was actually bipartisan support. So it was not about Trump at all. Whether Trump stays in the position for 3 years and somebody else comes or Democrat takes the power, at the end of the day, the goal isn't going to change. It is about American hegemony. It is about imposing the supremacy at a gunpoint, literally on your head. So I think every country, the leaders of every country are literally shaken at this point of time. And I think India, by not responding or playing with Trump's hypocrisy, has also elevated their situation, their role in the world. And I'm fascinated by what Modi ji has done. I think, in a short-term perspective, I would have loved to see some response from Modi ji, which on a global scale it's been published, but it hasn't. But at the end of the day, when you look at it from a long-term perspective, I think India played it superbly, brilliantly. And whether it's China or Russia, I also think that as a Hindu, as a country, whether you had a non-alliance policy or not, But when it comes to the standing up for the right, I think Hindu should have done it. Modi ji should have done it. When you go to the global stage and say this is not the war of the era of war and Ukraine, Russia should stop. Yes, but how long it's going to go through? Even India is at a point today, whether he likes it or not, you're going to be in war. 2026 is going to literally expose everything. So in general speaking, I think Trump is the product of centuries of colonial propaganda, and he literally embraced it. And it's whether it's as Trump stays or whether we even have election 2026 or not, American agenda is solidified. And this is what is scary at this point of time. And if I've even posted Stephen Miller's rant, pathetic rant, trashing how America is the superpower. Nobody can literally stop it. I mean, British also one time said that there's no sun doesn't set there. Look at what is happening over there. And you came after 20 years because of the pressure of America. And to me, I think there is no bigger example at this point of time. I think everybody is trying to diversify. De-dollarization isn't going to happen in a day. It's probably going to take 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, or whatever. But they can't stop the alternative payment methods either. So, to me, I think as an Indian American, it's our responsibility to even save America at this point of time, because we can neutrally understand the situation and talk about history in a very unbiased position, and also stop the downfall of America. And if we can at least serve the country that we are part of today, I think that's going to be a big deal for us. They don't look at us as a equal citizen. They name call us. They call us pathetic, scammers, fraudsters, or whatnot. But I don't think that matters anymore at this point of time. I think we should speak up. We have a brilliant opportunity to serve the country that we call as a home and save this country also from internal degradation.
Thank you, Purnima. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
the
Purnima. I have a question related to what just Purnima has mentioned to Navroop ji. She mentioned about the conversions and all that, like Hindus getting converted. So I have a question related to it, that I heard that United States, and especially the deep states, is investing a lot in conversions in the northeastern states of India. And they have a strategic, advantage in that to contain China. So I would like to hear your views about what do you think about it. Is it true, or is it something like a conspiracy theory going around?
No,
This
I
is,
don't think it's conspiracy at all. Can I answer quickly?
yes,
Yeah,
please.
you can, but you can do that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Northeast, in a statistical standpoint, 5 out of 7 states are have Hindus in minority today. They are Christianized. Even Manipur has lost the Hindu majority at this point of time. Very fractional, but still significant. If you look at it from a perspective of ambassadors of United States in India, even the Democrat ambassador Eric Garcetti in his last term, during Biden's term, has spoken very specifically about Northeast and their strategic interest on that. So I'm very concerned about that. So it's not a conspiracy at all. But I think the point I'm trying to make over here is that America goes around, sells this propaganda of democracy, freedom, sovereignty, human rights to the world. Unfortunately, that has fallen to the crack at this point of time, even in America, and the world is able to see it because of the fact that we have social media today. I'm even speaking to you through that vehicle. But tomorrow, these, whether it's Elon Musk or Zuckerberg or whoever it is, these American corporateers, the oligarchs of them, they could even take that authority from us. And social media, I don't know where this is going in terms of silencing and curving the speech and etc. The reason that we are able to see it because of social media, the reason that we are able to speak is because of social media. So I think we should utilize it properly and effectively and efficiently also for the good of the humanity. But from a perspective of Indian subcontinent, I say one thing, right? Any sovereign country has the right to decide and define and dictate whatever the hell it works for them. United States is not the power to dictate who should do what. And I think this has been my statement. I've been saying it everywhere. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, Poonabi, I would really say if you have time, do listen to the beginning of the space and the evolution of where America is today. You will really relate to some of the amazing points that Navroopji has talked about. I really encourage everybody here that if you listen to the first 1 hour, it was just Navroopji talking about the historical perspective and the way from Pax Americana, how it really happened and where are we today. Really, it's so insightful. I'm definitely putting this on the YouTube for people to look at. I'm very tempted to do like probably a YouTube show on this. But going to Ram, and then we also have Sandeep here. So Ram, it'll be great to have your reflections. You've been very, very strong on this.
Raviji, before we move on to Ram, I just want to hear the insights from Navroopji on the conversion rackets in the northeastern side as well as inside Punjab, which is happening today.
No, but Zahak, I would love to talk about. My only thing is that we will go away from the main topic, right? Because that opens up another Pandora's box. I don't know if you want to quickly respond to that.
Yeah, I'll just respond in a couple of lines. On conversion, this is a very controversial kind of a topic. We'll go really off road, and there are many other actors. It's not only the American or the missionaries and the church, or then many other actors which are involved into it. So we'll probably have it on some other date. That's the point.
Ram, do you want to any reflections from your side on the topic?
Yeah, sure. I think we have to keep in mind who voted for Trump, right? So it's the poorest of counties voted for him, right? So there is this belief in America that the fruits of capitalism haven't benefited everyone. And in fact, I posted some charts as a reply to this. If you look at both per capita GDP and GDP, America won, right? There was a time when the EU was getting close, when Japan was getting close, then America just took up. So America conclusively won the as far as the economy is concerned. But the benefits of that haven't accrued fairly to everyone, as is the case with capitalism and combination of perverse incentives. Now, like New York GDP has gone up, but New Yorkers, majority of them are struggling. So a Mamdani comes and says, others have stolen your wealth. Now, what Trump is saying is a socialist version at a national level, saying other countries have stolen our wealth. So, which is why we have to put all these tariffs and so on and so forth. And that tracks well with a lot of people who don't pay a lot of attention to data. And you have this grievance within the US here. Now, others have benefited, but it's patently not true. I mean, it's America won that battle, and then you add Trump's own psychology to that. Where I think Jon Stewart put it really well. He quickly realized that again, with all his books and the art of the deal and so on and so forth, the only thing is leverage, right? So you either have leverage or you don't have leverage. So he has taken this path, what someone called that coercive compliance, right? Coercive compliance is better than common cause alliance, right? So these alliances are all pointless. All we need is some kind of a coercive compliance, and therefore either you comply or you're going to get hit with tariffs or whatnot. And if you're a country like China, or Russia, you have some leverage, so you can get away by fighting. India is stuck in this middle point where we don't have a lot of leverage. We have some leverage, but there's no point also to fight back and make a big drama out of this. So, which is why you see a lot of these. We have now moved from many to one to many interactions. I mean, when was the last time you had this level of intensity of this foreign minister going, that foreign minister coming? This used to happen at a very slow pace. Now this seems like the only news that's kind of happening. And I'd say the last thing is what happens with, when the next administration comes. You can fault a lot about US, and I've lived here for a while now, is that you cannot fault them on not having some kind of a corrective mechanism. Look how quickly they dumped all the woke bullshit, right? And they kind of moved on to something else. So expect some kind of a corrective mechanism from the next administration, not because they want to be generous to any other country, but because they want to think of their own kind of self-interest. And if they see all this de-dollarization and so on and so forth is kind of hurting them, they'll have some corrective mechanism. And I don't know. I don't think we should read too much into these comments on rupture and so on and so forth. I totally expect all these guys to regroup if there is a next Dem president, because it's kind of worked for them. Again, things that have ruptured quickly can be put back. Countries like India have a sense of history, right? I think one of the diplomats was saying that, in any issue, when you go to an American and say, but there is history, the American responds saying, but that is history. So you're going to have a next administration that will quickly forget all of this, for good or for bad. They're going to say, hey, why are you going into history? Because we'll be talking about how Russia helped us in the 70s or the USSR helped in the 70s. But Americans don't operate on the same timeline of history. So expect some changes, for good or for bad, I don't know. But all of it will be in their own self-interest, not out of generosity. Like even H-1B visas are not out of generosity, because it is kind of been immensely beneficial to them. Yeah. So if you have interest, look at those charts, and it will tell you that story of how the GDP war was clearly won by the US, and if they see those threats, you should expect corrective mechanism in the next administration. But in this one, I don't expect too many changes, as this guy is never known to admit defeat, and you'll expect a lot of fighting back.
Great. Thank you, Ram. So, Navroop, going back to those two questions, they're still unanswered. One is the BRICS presidency.
Yeah.
And then I know that you've been there for 3 hours. I just want to know how much time more before we conclude. And I know there's already a request to do a space tomorrow on the EU FTA. And we also have Deep and Sandeep. Maybe before you answer, maybe Deep and Sandeep, do you want to ask a question? Because I think it's been 3 hours and he must be exhausted by now. So Deep, Sandeep, if you have any question before we give final comments to Navroopji to conclude.
No, I'm basically here to listen to Naurup. I want to listen to him.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. Maybe a comment at the end, but yeah, we can listen to.
We can hear your comment, Deep. You can go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Look, I appreciate the diversity of views on this panel. I actually don't think that Trump is that bad in many ways for India, or even if you want to think about it, the diaspora who live here. And the reason that I say that is, one of the big reasons, or at least a lot of people in geopolitical theory over the last 2-3 decades, they criticize the brain drain as one of the big consequences of India not being able to develop its own critical technologies the way that it really should have. And frankly speaking, I think the isolation model of Trump and kind of focusing on your country first is very beneficial to India, and I think that India is on a chart as a rising middle power, potentially a superpower in the next few years, to kind of indigenize a lot of its core technologies. And if you don't have engineers who are going to go work for General Electric, or are going to work for Microsoft or Amazon, and rather work for Indian companies and Indian startups and the Indian ecosystem, I do think that would have tremendous benefit to the growth and development of India. And over here in the United States, obviously we have a lot of Indian Americans on this panel, but there's a lot of people in different communities in this country that have not seen you could say, much improvement in their living standards from globalization, in my honest, humble opinion. And I think that, by limiting these work visas and focusing on trying to develop indigenous STEM talent, I think that, we're on a chart of natural recorrection. Regarding immigration, too, it should be noted that India is not among the 75 countries that Trump has banned or restricted immigration from. So immigration from India legally is still very much open, and this administration does want to work with India towards a trade deal. But obviously, American and Indian interests naturally are going to be different because India is a sovereign state. It has sovereign interests. Doesn't mean that they can't get along in certain domains and have a constructive partnership. But ultimately, the way America sees the world, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm a citizen of this country. I've lived and worked in this country my entire life. I'll tell you that right now the economy is at the strongest that it's ever been. GDP growth is at record highs. Unemployment, while it has ticked a little bit down, is still very, very strong. I mean, the idea that America is a regressive power or America is going back in its position in the world is a complete fallacy. So, I think that people should have an open mind when it comes to analyzing the Trump administration in its second term. What the Trump administration is doing, just like the previous speaker mentioned, is not too much different in foreign policy from the Biden administration. And I don't expect it to be any different, to be honest with you, if another Democratic administration comes into power. One very important thing, and I'll kind of conclude on this note, is the U.S. never deviates from its core interests in the world. And, if there's going to be challengers to the United States in the world order, then, the U.S. would take up, you could say, whatever it feels is in its best interests. And I think whether it's India and its partnership with Russia, I would expect any sovereign state to kind of do the same thing. So, overall, do I not like the rhetoric of some of the things that Trump and some people on the alt-right have said? Yes, but I don't think the alt-right is fundamentally MAGA. I don't think the alt-right is the Trump administration at its core. People like Nick Fuentes and even parts of Tucker Carlson, some of the things he said, it's not representative of the core MAGA base and the core MAGA policies, because if they were, you would have seen significantly different action taken. So, I'm quite optimistic, and on the contrary, and I will tell you that I largely do support the actions of the Trump government, and I think we can work together with India and whatever country in the world to formulate a better future. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sandeep. And I think it's been fantastic, folks. Just another reminder, do follow the speakers here on the panel, the co-host. And I also encourage everybody, we have more than 300 people here, do follow. If you go to my bio, you will see India 2047 handle. That's when we started our journey about 4 years ago, hosting these spaces, and we'll continue to do so. So please do follow India 2047 and join the community if you go to my profile. And with that, I'll give to Navroopji. First of all, thank you so much. It's been 3 hours. We're doing a Bollywood movie here. So thank you very much. So, with that, sir, over to you to really draw all the conclusions. But we will continue because I think tomorrow, if everybody's on, we will do the FTA space, those of you who have time. But over to you, Navroopji. I don't know if before I give it to you, Amit and Zahak, do you want to say some comment? Because we'll give him the final words.
No, thank you for the time, and I really appreciate Navroop ji and Ravi ji for hosting this and giving me the chance to co-host it, and Siddharth, Ram, and Purnima ji, the bearer, the last one who commented, Ruchi Walia, all of you, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I share the same sentiments. I think it's been wonderful hearing Navroopji and all the speakers. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. So my final take, we've all discussed ad nauseum what America is doing, America first. It obviously now Europe is saying Europe first, India is going to say India first, China is going to say China first, Russia is going to say Russia first, Saudi Arabia is going to say Saudi Arabia first, Israel is going to say Israel first, and MAGA will say no, 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 we want MAGA first over Israel first in America. All these people, Nick Fuentes will say something else. Okay, so all these first lobbies will continue, but on I would now turn, because we ultimately we most are Indians over here, or of Indian origin, NRIs who's living over here. So my only thing is we are living in a very turbulent times where we are headed for a monetary reset. This is not me. All major investors, all central banks accumulating gold and silver. And just as we speak, the silver has gone parabolic by almost 15% up in one day. Gold is touching another high, and DXY is breaking another low. So we are in a situation of an unprecedented times, unprecedented era, which we have already talked about already ad nauseum. In this situation, I would urge every Indian, your domestic issues, you may have domestic problem, you may have reforms of reforms in industries, you may have reforms in your judiciary, you have 10 other issues locally to think about. But please understand, globally, the global economy is going under the biggest change in a century. The monetary order, as so many people have said, is about to shift very soon. It's underway. It may take a month, it may take a year, it may take a couple of years, but the shift has started happening. In this kind of a situation, I urge all my fellow Indians to, take a step back, look calmly, look peacefully. Do not get emotionally triggered by events domestically and lose the larger focus over here. The larger focus is that your government has taken all steps to boost your economy in last 1.5 year. From cutting down rates to opening up, to slashing taxes from GST to the income tax, to signing those free trade deals and agreements with countries across the world so that Indian exporters could be provided alternate markets so that we can blunt the Trump tariff without compromising our red lines on trade, be it agriculture or dairy. Mr. Piyush Goyal and his whole team has worked tirelessly hard to make this thing possible, what is happening tomorrow. All credit to him. There is going to be certain problem, some religious issue or some social issue which might crop up, some reservation thing which may happen. But that does not mean that you condone, because you live in a time which the previous prime ministers or the previous governments never faced, from COVID to a monetary reset or something of a huge kind which is happening. The era of the since 1991, no government has faced, no Indian state has faced such kind of enormous pressures, such kind of sanctions, such kind of economic turbulence as we are facing now. So my request, we have done a lot in PLI schemes, manufacturing, electronics, specifically smartphones. We've done a lot in pharmaceuticals. We are the pharmacy of the world. We have done a lot in developing global capability centers, of which we are becoming a hub today. Nearly 50% of the back offices, including the BFSI sector in America, is housed in India. We see the H-1B job being moved to India, and ultimately the Indian talent is going to be skilled and trained over here. Yes, there is lack of infrastructure. Yes, there are pollution issues. Yes, there are so many other things lacking in this country, but this country is on the move. We are the fastest growing growing economy, large economy in the world. And as per, very noticed economists, 2028, 2029, we will be becoming the third largest economy. And I'm so, in all due respect, no power on this earth can disregard our country. Trumps will come, Trumps will go, Navarros will come, Navarro will go, but India will continue to grow. It's as simple as that. And with that take, I only say, continue to back your government. When it comes to foreign policy, there is no other way out. They are the ones who are securing your interest today. They are the one who are running helter-skelter to make sure alternate markets open for Indian products so that Indian economy can sustain itself in that onslaught of 50% tariff, which are even higher than China. Nothing justifies in this world. If you think you means the American Donald Trump thinks, India is buying Russian energy and oil and financing the war, then what are you doing buying uranium from Russia? Why are you buying fertilizers from Russia? Whom are you financing? Rather, the Treasury Department exempts 50 items from Russia, and those exemptions will ultimately go into will be removed in 2028. Really? We are financing the war. It is you and the Biden administration who decided to, indulge in November 2021, sign a strategic partnership with Zelensky, Ukraine, and say Zelensky can cooperate with NATO, which violated the conditions of a ceasefire in the Minsk, which was agreed with Russia in the Normandy 4 agreement. That led to the restarting of the Ukraine conflict. It is you who ignited it. And then when the Europeans are trying to buy cheap energy to hedge against the dominant America, and then you say, oh, Europe is also doing the sulking, it's like a FOMO, fear of missing out of the mega trade deals. Well, the Americans, they have no one else to blame but themselves. And the last point, continue to back your government. There will be some misses domestically, there will be some ups and downs, but when it comes to securing your interests, your national interests, many people cry about defense internationalization is woefully slow. I also echo something, it is slow. Your Tejas engine has been stopped a bit, it's delayed because of the GE timelines. Well, there are issues. But at the same time, the amounts of moves which you have done in smart manufacturing, renewable push, 50% of the targets have already been put into motion. With these trade deals, the kind of technology sharing or with the help of France, which you're about to do in defense, Safran and all that stuff, the MRO and everything which is going to come. I don't know how much it will come, but at least something is going on, something is happening. So the point over here is, I take an optimistic view of India as a rising power, which will hold a very big say in determining what happens next in the global order. And next 3 to 4 years are very critical in India's journey as a nation. And it happens to be that this Prime Minister will continue till 2029 and maybe even beyond. So I really wish that people take a sensible view, do not get emotionally charged up, hold back, take some water, think peacefully about it, and then decide in which direction is your country headed. Your country needs you. You need to back and support them. You don't need to fall for those people who are trying to say nothing is happening, everything is dump in India. No. If India was in dumps, Canada to France to Germany to European Union, or even Brazil's Prime Minister Lula is visiting India very soon, these countries will not be seeking trade with you. So I will put it at that, I'll stop at that. Thank you, everyone. It was a wonderful conversation. And, I would say, happy Republic Day to all of you once again. I know it's already 27th in India, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, thank you so much, and happy Republic Day, everybody. But this has been brilliant, and I'm so glad. Some of my folks said, we need to get back doing these spaces. So, really want to thank all the listeners, all the panelists, and of course our featured panelist Navruji. Thank you so much. We'll,
Ravi, just one request. If try and possible this space on the YouTube as well, because people can then invite circulate.
We'll get it done tomorrow. It'll be done.
Yeah.
I'll get the team to do it. And definitely, I think we will get into the FTA discussion. But, there is so much we can just continue, but I know it's very late for you. But thank you so much, everybody. And thank you to all the coaches. Sanchit, thank you. And Zaha, Kamit, and Ram, Siddharth, and Punnimaji. and Deep, great points. And Lucifer, I know that you're there. We wanted you to come up, and all the other folks who spoke. So I hope I'm not missing anybody. Again, thank you everybody. Bharat Mata ki jai, and speak to you guys soon. And tomorrow will be a very interesting opening of the market. So all the best, everybody.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.